OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Bang on 7:30, it's Monday morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It's myself and Owen with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or, of course, you can always leave a comment for us on the YouTube channel. Hello to all those Manchester United fans who are gloating, particularly after some of our comments on Friday. I say our comments on. I might try and throw you under the bus or pull you with me, but I certainly was painting it that if I was Manchester City, what I would be doing is taking Man United out to the woodshed and hammering them so that they don't recover from it, inflicting a massive psychological blow. Instead, what Man City did was, oh no, that's what they did.
What show are you referring to here where you made this analogy? Because I certainly wasn't.
I was on the Paddy Power half hour on Friday going, this is it. This is the moment where Manchester City inflict one of those. What was the record defeat? That kind of. It's a fairly similar conversation, I would have said, with the same intention about giving a sucker an even break. When Man United are down, when you're on a roll, if you're Manchester City, and if you're going to be one of the all-time great teams, what do? They're going to win the league this year, but what they've done is they've given comfort to Manchester United, belief. They've put a little bit of fertiliser on those green shoots at Old Trafford. That's a very dangerous thing to do, right?
Yeah, you're giving a sucker an even break thing hasn't worked out well for you in 2021. A lot of suckers have got a lot of even breaks, and a lot of them have made hay with it.
I mean, if you're Manchester City now, all of a sudden, every single European game you play against a team who are mediocre is going to be absolutely terrifying, because you've just seen a relatively mediocre Manchester United team come and, apart from the ball hitting the crossbar that one time, not really feel like there was much threat.
Well, this is exactly why Manchester City have struggled in Europe over the last few seasons. This is why even they got knocked out of the FA Cup last year, I would go as far as to say as well, that they can dominate these games so much that over the course of a season, they will end up winning the league, 6 seasons out of 7, 5 out of 6, whatever it's going to end up being. But when it comes to these one-off games, they will get stung against a good quality opposition. Now, I know you're saying it's an average Manchester United team. It probably is in the context of Manchester United, but in the context of the Premier League, this is one of the better teams that they're going to come up against, one of the toughest games of the season. And when that happens, Manchester City are always going to be in a danger of losing it, which of course doesn't matter in the context of the Premier League, because it's only going to happen to them up to 5 times a season maybe. But in the Champions League, it's probably going to happen to them once in the knockout stages, and that'll be the thing that leaves them on their backside in the Champions League. So this, what we saw yesterday, is the exact same thing that we've been seeing in the Champions League for the past few seasons. Now, the thing is, you do have to be a good team to take advantage of this. Like we saw Wolves last week, for example, who were good enough to get an equaliser, but then just weren't solid enough at the back, and City ended up rolling over them. You do have to give huge amounts of credit to Manchester United yesterday. And Manchester United are just so unbelievably hard to pin down themselves at the moment. They are the biggest drama kings in world sport, where you're thinking about Manchester United for the last 6 weeks and you're thinking, God, this is close to crisis point. Everything seems awful. Everything is going down the toilet for this Manchester United season. And then yesterday they turn around when it really matters and it's like, nah, we're fine. Don't worry about us. Everything's totally fine. And they have a habit this season of pushing things right up to the point where you're like, this could be a crisis, and then hitting the brakes and everything seems okay for a little bit longer.
Are they fine, though? They're a point clear of Leicester. Are they fine? Is this not another false dawn? That's the problem. That's why none of this makes that much sense. Like, the point you make about Manchester City in the Champions League in the last couple of seasons, generally what's happened is that somehow Pep Guardiola has got inside his own head and has picked a team to beat the team that he thinks the opposition are picking a team to beat his team, and has tied himself up in knots. Didn't even bother with that. It looked like, when I saw the team selection, like, okay, this is the team roughly that you would expect to play today. Maybe you'd stick Phil Foden in, perhaps. But there wasn't like some mad kind of weird perverted science happening. That's that on their side. Are Manchester United all that? Even though they've won yesterday and they've played really well, can we suddenly blah, blah, blah away the last 5 or 6 games?
No, but I think that Manchester United are a team who could do something like win the Europa League this season. In fact, I would make them favourites for the Europa League this season. And it's a question about whether or not that represents progress and whether or not they can build on that next season. They obviously need to sign this summer. There's no question about it. But you look at someone like Anthony Martial yesterday in isolation, and like this is the living embodiment of the drama king analogy, really. Like, where was that performance over the last season, really, from Anthony Martial? Like, this is not the Anthony Martial we know what we saw yesterday. Like, I know you haven't seen Dodgeball, but he really reminded me of a guy called Gordon in Dodgeball, who is a decent enough dodgeball player, but he's just too nice. And then they get to the finals, and Gordon is the last man standing for the average Joe's team. And he sees his wife up in the crowd, and she's getting courted by another man. And this makes him so angry that he ends up playing the best game of his life and takes out the entirety of the opposition team. I don't know what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did to Anthony Martial before the game yesterday, but he made him unbelievably angry to the point where we saw beast mode Anthony Martial come out, where he was terrorising Ruben Dias, the best defensive signing since Virgil van Dijk in the Premier League. He was terrorising John Stones. He was bringing his teammates into play. He was running faster and stronger than ever we'd seen. I don't know what Solskjaer did, but he needs to do that again. And if that's the way he's going to get Anthony Martial to a level, he needs to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And Martial needs to do it himself. Like, the biggest indictment, or I guess rubber stamping, I should say, of Martial's performance yesterday was just a camera on his face when he came off. The sort of semi-frown, little smirk, the sort of, I played bloody well today look. You know, anybody who says anything to him, he gives them a little smile as he's walking up to his seat in the stand as he gets subbed off. The guy knows he played really, really well. The guy now needs to put that into practice for the next few games and prove to Manchester United as a club that actually he can lead the line for them next season, because he just hasn't shown it enough. But a man of the match performance from him yesterday, which I don't think too many people saw coming.
Look, maybe the weird perverted science here is actually happening in Pep Guardiola's mind, where he's saying, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to let Martial run riot, and Man United will think that they've got a world-class striker right there, and they won't replace him with a world-class striker. They won't get in the sweepstakes for any of the 3 or 4 genuine world-class number 9s who are out there at the moment. They'll stick with Martial, and we will continue to crush them for the next couple of seasons and keep them at bay. That's the only way that I can see it making any sense. And it certainly doesn't make any sense, even irrespective of how good Martial was yesterday, for Man United to go into next season with Martial as their out-and-out number 1 striker. Does it? It surely can't. 4 goals this season.
If everybody was fit yesterday, Anthony Martial probably wouldn't have started the game. Like, Cavani has been the number 9 that Manchester United fans want to see start their big games. So he's not even the best number 9 at the club, according to most people. Now, that might change after yesterday, and if he can put it back to back. But that is where he was in the standing. There was time this season where he could be played left or right as a striker, that he's been used as, he's almost been moved around in a utility basis, but he's clearly much better through the middle. And with Marcus Rashford, at least he can play either side of the striker, maybe get the best out of himself. But with Anthony Martial, you kind of feel that he needs to be the number 9 or he's not going to be in the team. And I think at times this season he just hasn't been the best number 9 in Manchester United's team. So
what do you do if you're Manchester United? Do you hope that Martial can continue on this form? Is this a turning point for him? Look, it's not beyond the bounds possibility that somebody took a long time to fully understand what their role was, and that Solskjaer is going to get the best out of him over a period of time. But fool me once. Like, we've seen performances from Martial where he's been unplayable. We've seen streaky form from Martial. Wasn't he absolutely brilliant when football returned, or was he absolutely brilliant before football went?
After football returned.
After football returned. It's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. And then the season ended, and then that form disappeared. And this season, he's had 4 goals and 3 assists, which, as somebody who has played a lot of football, given Cavani arrived late, was injured, was suspended, I don't see how you could go into next season with him as your number 1 out-and-out striker. And look, I don't know, maybe he's fine as a sub, and maybe he plays angry for a season or 2, and you get these performances regularly in big games, but I don't know. I think that would be very damaging for Manchester United to take yesterday's result and to assume that they're closer to Manchester City than they actually are, even though they've just won and they have Solskjaer has an incredible record against Guardiola. I think that Man United fans need to cool their jets a little bit on this, and to ask questions about, like, how is this team going to get better? Like, that centre-back partnership, you know, one swallow doesn't make a summer. There was definitely times when it looked a little bit dodgy for them. Different refereeing, more aggressive refereeing of Harry Maguire.
I think that's harsh. I think that's harsh to have a go to mention Manchester United centre back partnership in the context of yesterday. Like I know we had this conversation yesterday about what are they doing? Are they making the rest of the team paranoid, and that's letting down the Manchester United attack? But like I don't know, I'm not subscribing to the idea that they deserve much blame at all for the nil-alls, the string of nil-alls that they suffered over the last few weeks. And I think they definitely are completely exempt of blame when it comes to yesterday, because Manchester City were getting into good positions, and yeah, Rodri hit the post, but outside of that, maybe Raheem Sterling gets on the end of that cross and it's on the back of the net. But it's Manchester City you're up against, like one of the most star-studded teams in European football. I think that for once, Maguire and Lindelof deserve to be off the hook on yesterday's performance.
Look, we can come back to that. Again, the one swallow doesn't make a summer. I just don't think this Manchester United team have made as much progress just yet. Let me see them perform like this over the next 6-8 weeks and see what happens, because there's every chance that, as you've said, that flaky form that we've seen will come back before the end of the season. And if that happens, well, now they do have Pogba to have back in. It'll be interesting to see how long Rashford is out for. And also in Luke Shaw, they've got the best left back in world football at the moment. If Andy Robertson was the best left back on the back of, 5 or 6 weeks of good quality performances, gonna get hammered for that, 5 or 6 months of good quality performances, then surely now the Liverpool fans must be saying, wow, that Luke Shaw, he's awesome. Speaking of Liverpool, we should talk about this. The Joy of 6 graphic, let's talk about 6 rather, was doing the rounds immediately yesterday as their 6th successive home defeat. It's insane. This was the best home record in world football, like teetering on the brink of an all-time great record, and it has absolutely collapsed, and I have no real understanding. It's almost like they made a pact with the devil at some point, and the devil is coming back and saying, right, pay me. Screw you, pay me. And they've got to pay week in, week out. It makes no sense.
Like, you try and point towards any sort of underlying reason why this has happened to Liverpool and how they've gone off a cliff. Not so much this season, but in the second half of the season. I think that we saw mad things happen early on. And I think people are using the Aston Villa 7-2 as the starting point of this completely incorrectly. Like, I don't think that Aston Villa 7-2 was the start of this. Like, people try and cling on to that a little bit more because Virgil van Dijk played that night. And it's almost used as a reason to counteract the injury excuse. And I accept that the injuries are an excuse for this current vein of form, because no team who've got any designs of qualifying for Europe should be in the current vein of form. But in the middle of Christmas, they were brilliant. We thought that we were entering another proper Liverpool pulling away from the pack situation again in and around Christmas time. We weren't sure. We thought Manchester City might get their act together and catch them. And as it turned out, a couple of weeks later, it was actually United versus City that might have been our title race. So what has happened in between the Villa game and then proceeding to fall off the cliff is more interesting than what actually preceded the 7-2, because that's the reason why their season went off. I don't think that's why their season went off. And you look at their recent statistics, for example, and we've said this before, but it's that shot on target statistic, which is just a weirdly low considering they've had more possession, more shots in the vast majority of games that they're playing, that their attack just isn't creating decent enough opportunities for themselves to put the ball in the back of the net. And Mo Salah is really struggling at the moment. I know they mixed things up yesterday necessarily with Leipzig coming up, but I think actually the team probably used that bit of a kick to try and change things, to try Jota and Salah up front together and see what would happen. And it just didn't work once again. Like, I think Salah maybe is looking okay at the moment. He's not looking as desperate as some people might say. His statistics aren't great when it comes to scoring, but he's looking okay. And it does seem that Jurgen Klopp is, confused by what's actually going on at the moment. He can't seem to fix what is happening in front of him. And I think we're very quick to say, that last season was just this massive ball of energy for Liverpool and there's no way they could continue it. But I think they continued it decently all the way up till Christmas time, and then it's fallen off. It's what happened after then that I'm more interested in.
We'll come back to this a little bit later on. I'm going to hear from David Meyler, Kenny Cunningham and Brian Kerr across the show as well. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Alan Quinlan is standing by. We'll talk to him in just a second. We're running through the sports pages at 8:05. David Meyler at 8:15. Brian Kerr at 8:40. Vikki Wall is going to talk to us as part of the GPA's announcement about the raft of new scholarships that are available to LGPA members. There is no LGPA anymore, it's just the GPA. And the performance rankings coming your way at 9:10, more from Kenny Cunningham at 9:30 as well. The hashtag is, as it says there, OTB AM. You can get us 0879 180 180. Now, it's 7:45 this morning. Alan Quinlan is with us. Alan, good morning to you. How are you?
Good, thanks. Yeah, how are you, lads?
Yeah, look, we'll talk about Ireland in just a couple of minutes' time, but I did want to get your perception on where we're at with Munster at the moment, because it must be pretty exciting for Munster fans when they see the quality of young players coming through and they see the quality of players coming back from injury. So with Carberry back, with Snyman thereabouts, there is like really this bubbling sense that it's Munster's time.
Yeah, I think, look, there's a sense of excitement there. I think Joey Carberry being back is fantastic for Munster, and it's getting him started now and playing in the next couple of weeks in the last couple of rounds of the Pro 14. You know, they've made the final now, so there's a little bit of pressure off of them. It was a great game on Friday night. I think it was a good win for Munster. Great try from Mike Haley, and I think unfortunate for Connacht, it was highly unlikely they were going to catch Munster anyway. But it was probably as good as, you know, strong a team as Andy Friend could have picked for Connacht, and Munster are missing a few. So their depth and that mentality and that resilience about getting that result was really important for them. I think if they'd lost that game, it would have dented confidence. It keeps that feel-good factor in the team going ahead for the last couple of rounds. And obviously the final with Leinster, that's the big one. You know, I think will Snyman be back? It's highly unlikely he'll be back for that final. If they were to get him back in any form, it would be incredible. We saw videos of him running last week, but Johan van Graan was playing down the fact that he was out doing straight line running. So if they had him back, it would be an incredible boost for him. But a lot of the young players are playing well, as you say, and I think they'll really fancy their chances now. And to get the job done on Friday and know now that they're in a final, I think the problem they have is, and Leinster will have the same problem, is with their international players. You know, they play Scotland, England, and then they've got to get ready for a Pro 14 final, and then the week after they've got the last 16 of the European Champions Cup. So if all those players play the internationals, it's 4 weeks in the trot, and that's probably not going to happen. So unfortunately, we're probably going to see some of the internationals missing from that final.
Are we starting to see the impact of the coaching ticket changes on the Munster team now, as more frontline players become available and as the systems bed in? Are we starting to see that, and also the weather gets a little bit better, that the style of play that Munster have embraced is very different from what it was 18 months or even 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's we've seen glimpses of it this season. They're still not probably as clinical as they need to be to win a final. They've got to put all that together in the final and deliver, because I think the biggest problem I've had is in those Leinster games in the last couple of seasons, they've come up short and they haven't taken those opportunities or chances. So we've certainly seen glimpses of the attack and the execution being better, passes sticking, and a bit more variety in their game. But you know, the test will be in a couple of weeks. I think it's fine doing it in round league games in the Pro 14. They did it in Claremont. You know, they did. Their attack was brilliant, but they still come up short in some games, and they're not where they probably need to be. Obviously, you've got to put that together in a final now against Leinster, and if they do that, then they'll take the next step. But there's certainly there's optimism there and belief that, you know, they have tried to change it. So I think the attack approach has been much better. It's not that they've become this team that are really expansive all the time. They still kick a lot. They're still pragmatic in their approach, but I think their attack seems to be more variety in the attack. Even when players are carrying the ball forwards and stuff like that, they're running good lines, trade lines, dummy lines, and the timing and the execution is much better. So, like I said, they've got to put that together in a final for all of us or people on the outside to say they've taken it to another level. But I think the attack has been much better, for sure.
a couple of moments where the line out looked a bit unsteady on Friday. Jack Carty caused a few moments of trouble with a few kicks in behind. Did Connacht expose a couple of areas for Munster to work on over the next couple of weeks?
It's probably a personnel issue as well, and sometimes when your line out unravels, I think you certainly can't do that in the final. In the big games, or you will pay a heavy price. 7 lineouts to lose on Friday night was way too much, and that's an area that they've got to really get right. I think there was timing issues, overthrows, and Connacht were really good in putting pressure on Munster, and that's a concern for sure. Tyke Byrne will come back into the side. Klein didn't start the game. So there's probably a little bit of inexperience in Wycherley. Billy Holland is very, very experienced, but some of the execution was really poor, and that will cost you. You lose 2 or 3 lineouts in a game, that can cost you in a tight game. They won't get away with that in the final. So certainly that's an area that they've got to improve on. And the challenge for both sides will be getting their internationals back in and how they play them and who do they integrate back into the side. But I think for Munster, if Carberry gets good quality ball, particularly off the line out, and they can attack with Dialinde and Chris Farrell, Conway, Earls, Haley, well, they have the ability to trouble Leinster in that final. But set piece is first and foremost on. They've got to get that right, and that's an area that really needs to improve in the next few weeks.
It's probably not the easiest thing in the world when Olsen Delan and Gavin Thornbury are out there trying to disrupt it. Like, we've obviously seen Delan in the Green of Ireland quite a few times at this point. Thornbury's 27 at this point, I think, Alan. Like, is there a future in the Ireland team for him?
Well, you know what? I've watched this guy now all season and last season, and I think that there's definitely potential. I think he's over 6'8". He's 120 kilos. He's mobile. He's agile. I think he's probably a bit of a late developer when you say he's 27, but
second row's been going to 40 though, Alan. So this is only the start of his career.
Yeah. Well, I think he definitely has potential to go up to the next level. You'd love to see him really be a dominant force and be really a big bruiser. He has that physicality. I think if you can get a guy like him involved with Ireland and he can take the step up, he has that size and physicality and that presence. It's just about doing it at a level above, really, and being really dominant figure and imposing figure as a big second row. But his performance the other night was very, very impressive, and I think it's something for Andy Friend to think about, Paul O'Connell to think about getting him in, getting him involved, and seeing if he can take the step up.
There's a bunch of players who played at the weekend who are kind of in that category where they're just a little bit outside of the reckoning for an Ireland squad. And maybe if there'd been a complete change of coaching ticket, you would have seen the coaches cycle through these players a bit more and give them time and give them some exposure. Like Mike Haley was on the fringe of squads, has kind of been talked about in that role before. Scott Penny, another couple of tries, man of the match again. Performance from him, like one of the highest try-scoring back rows in Europe at the moment. There's no real talk of these guys actually being in Ireland squads or stepping up and getting a chance at the moment, is there?
Mike Haley hasn't been consistently good enough. He's had glimpses in matches, and his aerial ability is very good. I think the try he scored the other night. We don't see enough of that. We don't see enough of the line breaks. We don't see enough of a real intensity to his game. He's a very, very talented player. But I think he gives you a few nerves at times with some of his decision making. And the fundamentals of being a rock solid fullback at times aren't there. He's multi-talented. I just think if he becomes more resolute in doing the basics really, really well and adds a little bit more to that attacking game that we know he has. That was a wonderful try, the way he took the ball in the air, accelerated through the tackle and the chip over the top and try. He can do that, but I think it's consistency. At times, it's about an understanding of the game as well and putting the ball, putting the ball into touch at times, doing the simple things really well. I think there was a penalty Cardiff had last week. They had a long-range penalty to take the lead. It dropped short under the post. Mike Haley catches it. And I just think if I was out in the field, I'm saying to him, put it into touch. Just make sure your touch. They've just missed a penalty. Slow the game down. Control the tempo. He kicks it long down the field. Stays in play. Cardiff run back and they get another penalty. It's just adding pressure. And you just think it's that decision-making that needs to be better for him. But look, he has that ability. I think he's been, was called into the Irish squad a couple of times. And it's just doing it at the top level and doing it consistently. You mentioned Scott Penny there. I think he's an incredible player. He has that ability. And he's kind of like, what's happened to Gavin Coombs. I think he needs to play in European games, which is always a tall order with Leinster because they have so much depth in the back row. Doing it in the Pro 14 is different than doing it in Europe. And I think if you end up playing in those, starting for Leinster in those European games, well, then the step up becomes a little bit easier and he grabs the attention of the selectors. But he's a fantastic player, Scott Penny. And, me talking about Mike Haley there, he has that ability to do that as well, to play, but it's just consistency and doing it in the big games, in European games and grabbing the attention and the limelight.
One player who looks like it's only a matter of time before he gets a run of games for Ireland is Robert Balakoon. A brilliant try in the first half for Ulster against Leinster on Saturday night, and he's been spoken about on the show for the last couple of months. Actually, he's having a really good season.
Well, he's an incredible athlete. He was injured for a while on, but he's one of these guys again that you think he has that little bit of X factor, that special ability. He's big, he's athletic, he's quick. So again, it's just about getting a run of games for him and finishing off the season well for Ulster. It was incredibly disappointing for them. It just shows the depth of Leinster again and the intensity they were able to bring to the game the other night and no panic when they were under pressure. When they were down to 13 men, they were down 12-3, and you just get the sense of the good teams and look, Ulster in that revolving kind of building process to try and get to that kind of consistency and that level of calmness and ruthlessness. And Leinster had it the other night. They didn't panic in any way. And I know the sending off for Ulster changes the game a bit, but Leinster were ruthless, and I think that was a big setback for Ulster because they probably close to their strongest team out. They're missing a couple of their internationals, but obviously Leinster are missing way more. They needed a desperation to win the game, and it was all going well at 12-3, and Leinster completely changed the game, and they just changed gears and showed that ruthlessness that's required. But every time Balakoon gets the ball, he excites, and hopefully he's someone that can come through and have a big impact for Ireland. I think he has. I'd be really excited about him as a player.
Stockdale obviously played and has been first choice any time he's been available, really, for Ireland. His try-scoring record is second to none. And if we're going to do business in tournaments down the road, you kind of want Jacob Stockdale playing. Do you take him out of the firing line for a little while and just let him get his confidence back and say, look, it's fine, we know what you can do? Or do you rush him straight back into the team for the last two games of the Six Nations?
It's hard to rush him back in. I think he played well the other night and he showed glimpses of what he can do. He's an incredibly talented player going forward, and defensively he was better as well, and he put in some good hits, and it's just igniting that passion within the guy and doing that just on a regular basis, I think, and you'd love to see him angry. You can't just press the switch and get guys to be like that when it's not in their kind of persona. But, I wouldn't be rushing him back in and say he's got to start against Scotland. I think if he plays, if he's out of the team for a while, it won't do him any harm. I think he's very, very important for Ireland going forward, Ger, and someone who has that bit of brilliance that can win matches for you and add to your attack. So, I don't think he'll be involved or starting against Scotland. You never know. think the coaches would have watched that game the other night, but when you're on the receiving end of a big loss like that, I think if Ulster were winning that game and Jacob Stockdale is scoring a couple of tries and making lots of line breaks, well, then that argument is stronger. But I don't think that'll happen in the next couple of weeks.
What do you do, Alan, if you're looking at this few weeks ahead with Six Nations straight into the Pro 14 final, into the Heineken Cup? Navigating that is a tricky one. Like, is there a hard and fast rule in terms of which is going to be prioritised from a Munster and Leinster standpoint?
Yeah, it's a hard one on. Obviously, the provincial coaches, Leo Cullen and Johan van Graan, don't have any control of what happens with Ireland. And the priority is to try and win those last two games for Andy Farrell. And it just depends what way the players come back to their provinces. Integrating them after playing England at the end of the Six Nations and putting them straight back into a Pro 14 final is going to be tricky. I suspect they'll try and play their strongest hand there and maybe rotate or change a little bit maybe for the European game, the last 16 game, and hopefully they can get through that. It just depends. Maybe they play a couple one week and not the next week. So it's very, very difficult, and it's an incredibly busy number of weeks for the internationals then to come out of Six Nations and to be looking at a huge final for them the week after, which, Leinster have won this so many times in the last number of years, and Munster, it's 2011 since they won a trophy. So there's probably more of a need for Munster to go with their full hand. And we've seen Leinster in the last couple of years in semi-finals and finals rotate their squad and not play some of their internationals and still win those games. So I think it's probably a little bit easier for Leo Cullen with the depth he has. I think Johan van Graan will, weigh up his options and probably look to try and play all these internationals for that final if he can.
Getting one over in Leinster is really important.
Well, winning a trophy on is really important. Haven't won one in 10 years. So I think if there's a glimmer of hope and a slight little bit of vulnerability in Leinster in their selection, even though that may not be the case, but if you have a couple of your internationals not playing for Leinster and Munster have a chance, I think he's got to try and play him if he can. But who knows? This will be dictated by how the players feel and what kind of involvement they have in the next couple of weeks. But it's a tricky one for both coaches, no doubt about it.
Would you make many changes for Scotland if you're in the Ireland camp off the back of the Italy performance and having seen how well and the confidence that comes from that? It was only Italy, and we can say now Italy are rubbish. They have been, and even the questions about their continued existence in the tournament get louder and louder year on year. So you don't want to over invest in that result, but at the same time, professional sport and confidence, it's so fragile and it's so important and it's so fickle that if a team has confidence, you will be very tempted not to make too many changes.
Yeah, there won't be too many changes, Ger, and I think the makeup of the team and the team that started against Italy, I like that, and I think Rhys Ruddock is probably the one that can feel hard done by not having any involvement. And you saw the performance of him again at the weekend, how good he can be, and I think he was unfortunate. But having Tadhg Beirne in the team and the way he's played this season is probably very important to Ireland. So I think he'll probably start at 6. Dave Kilcoyne was putting a bit of pressure on Cian Healy to start. I think Healy will start. Depends on how Ronan Kelleher is as well with the Rob Herring one. But I don't see many changes. I think the impact off the bench is going to be very, very important. So there might be 1 or 2 changes from the starting team that played against Italy, but more overall it'll be pretty similar to that game. And, of course, it is only Italy, and confidence is very important to this team. And some of the attack was really good. They'll have to figure out a strategy to play against Scotland and try and deny them the ball and take away that high tempo, aggressive style that Scotland has shown in the Six Nations. They've been, they were very unlucky against Wales. The sending off was significant, and they're kind of flying high at the moment, and that's the way they'll be feeling, that they'll really feel that they can go after Ireland here. So Ireland are on the back foot and will be underdogs going to Murrayfield. The record has been good there, and all our Irish players have won there over the years, in recent years. So I think it'll be pretty much the same selection for the Scottish game from that Italy selection.
It seems there's a nice bit of pressure on Scotland going into this one, Alan, because stylistically Ireland have managed to beat Scotland up at times over the past few years, and Scotland have tried to play a good brand of rugby, and it hasn't got them over the line in these games against Ireland. They kind of need to do both. They need to play good rugby and beat Ireland this weekend.
Yeah, they do, and then obviously the game against France being called off won't have helped them. It'll be probably 3 or 4 weeks before since they played a game, so that may be a telling factor in the end. But they're probably sick of Ireland beating them in Pro 14 and at international level. So they'll be, they'll really fancy their chances, here with Ireland coming to Murrayfield. But on the flip side of that, Ireland won't be daunted by the fact, but Scotland were incredible in Twickenham in the opening game. The tempo and the aggression they brought to that game. So it'll be a spiky affair, I'd imagine, and it will be down to who imposes themselves physically. And if Scotland get enough ball, I think Redpath in the centre has been brilliant from Stuart Hogg. We know the dangers they have. Finn Russell can win or lose a game for you. He's incredibly talented. So it's about putting pressure on their talented players and their back row. Hamish Watson, Jamie Ritchie, these are guys who can really upset the flow of the opposition. So it's an intriguing game, and it's one that will excite. But there's, if Ireland can get through this one, then they can look forward to England and really throw the kitchen sink at that last one and go into that game with confidence. But they're still vulnerable, Ireland, and we don't know where they're at. Really, are they back? Are they making progress?
These two games are going to decide that. Yeah, ultimately,
they are going to decide that. So it's a tough game for them. It's a tough game going to Murrayfield.
Would you start Conor Murray?
No, because I think he's been out for a number of weeks, and I think Gibson Park has played well, and I think he's games under his belt. So I think Murray maybe could be on the bench. I probably wouldn't start him. Because of the fact that he's been out for a number of weeks.
Okay, fair enough. Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
8:08 this morning here on OTBAM. Packed show still to come. We're going to hear from Vikki Wall, Brian Kerr and David Meyler before 9 o'clock. Up next, we're bringing you the top stories this morning.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the ball.
I just love playing any sort of ball, team sport. And as you mentioned, traveling around the world, it was insane. Sydney, New Zealand, San Francisco, Russia, South Africa, America, Canada. Been to some amazing places, and all while playing sport. Again, growing up as a girl, I never even thought this was a dream.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Auto Mower.
Auto mower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Auto Mower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
Get ready for the Cheltenham Festival with the Boyle Sports app, with a special offer guaranteed on every race, every day of the festival, plus extra places on each way bets over all 4 days. The Boyle Sports app has got you covered. Need to study up? Check out our Racing Post insights or watch our exclusive video previews with Cheltenham Gold Cup winning jockey Robbie Power. The Cheltenham Festival on the faster than ever Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie. 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Yeah, I don't know what you can say about how he looks. He certainly doesn't look happy, frustrated, I'd say.
Yeah.
Bemused, I think, is probably how he feels in his head. Bemused to how they could go from where they were last season, 99 points, 67 games unbeaten at home, to a situation where they could be on the edge today of losing 6 games in a row at home. I mean, it's extraordinary turnaround in form. It's been an extraordinary season, extraordinary time in the game, extraordinary time in the world. But this is really, really strange turn of events at Liverpool, with no crowd in the ground. Is that having a big influence on it? It has to be a part of it, but it can't be the only part of it that has had an impact like this. And you look at the team today, I think he took a risk in selecting this side. I think he gave a message to the players that this match isn't quite as important as the match during the week. That's a dangerous plan to go into a game with against any opposition.
Yeah, dangerous plan against any opposition, says Brian Kerr. We'll hear more from Brian in just a little while. He was part of the commentary team yesterday for Liverpool's defeat to Fulham, which we obviously broadcast live every Premier League game every Sunday on Off the Ball and News Talk, as well as the Manchester Derby. We're going to hear more from Brian Kerr and Kenny Cunningham a little bit later on this morning. This Sunday on OTB, live and exclusive radio commentary of the North London Derby as Arsenal welcome a suddenly very interesting Spurs team. All of a sudden, Gareth Bale looks like Gareth Bale again. It's almost like something happened and he is back to where he's supposed to be. I'm going to run you briefly through the sports pages. We can start with OTBSports.com. DUP MP Gregory Campbell wants the UK Parliament to recognise Rangers' title win. He's put down a standing order to say they should congratulate Rangers on the title win. As a lifelong Rangers fan, the thing starts. Bruno Fernandes credits his kids for decisive Derby penalty. Solskjaer hails Shaw and Martial performances following Derby win. And Roy Keane and Souness on Liverpool run that beggars belief. I was crying because I felt helpless. Ferguson talking about his brain hemorrhage as well. So lots of news to keep you entertained this morning as you're listening to us here on OTB AM, on the OTB Sports website and on the app. Back page of the Irish Independent this morning. So bad I just couldn't resist the urge to pun. It's the Paris-Nice race. Sam Bennett wins the first stage. Bennett's Nice starts the season. I mean, you know. Liverpool labelled mentality midgets. Kerr leads criticism as woeful Reds slump to 6th straight home defeat, but Klopp tries to remain positive. They're still in the Champions League. That's the point, isn't it? They're still in the Champions League. The front cover of the Examiner this morning is Bruno with his hands over his ears, noisy neighbours. Is that what the reference was to? Do we know what the reference was to? Or is that not just what his one of his various goal celebrations?
Blocking out the haters, I think, is what I would have picked it up as.
Okay.
But that's just me.
Front of the Irish Times is the same picture. Sam Bennett in his Quick Step uniform before he'll take the yellow jersey tomorrow. Elliot Band leaves Foster in line for glory at Cheltenham. That's the horse racing story that's rumbling on. Leinster and Munster set to meet at the RDS. And Cancelo culture exposed as Shaw stars in tactical triumph. It's a bit of a pun. It's unusual that you'd get one in the Irish Times, but they're trying. Final whistle. The back page of the front page of the Telegraph is the same goal-scoring celebration. And crisis for Klopp's mentality midgets is the same headline. Their Shock and Shaw is the Shock and Awe rip-off from the Daily Star this morning, and Klopp hit for 6th. Stevie Glee is tab of the morning to you, right? No?
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Sorry, I'm still thinking about the mentality midgets thing. Like, how long do you think Jamie Carragher was sitting on that line before deciding that now was the time? Do you think he's got like a black book of bad things to say about Liverpool, and the box that needed to be ticked was getting beaten at home by Fulham, and then he was like, "It's time, guys, quieten down your mic there. It's time for me to unleash this phrase," and away he went yesterday.
I think he came up with it on the spur of the moment because it's not very good. That would be my take on that. That he just blurted it out, and it's like, oh, did I actually say? Did I really like? The UK office. You've seen the UK office. They obviously have there's a fairly famous minute-and-a-half long conversation which ends with, "What's an elf?" Have you seen that one?
I have seen that one.
Yeah, that's what springs to mind when I imagine Jamie Carragher free-forming his stuff for his little black book of bad things to say about Liverpool. The Irish Sun, their back page, School Ole Day. Okay, 21 game winning run over. Pep United taught us a lesson. Cop slump is Klopp's worst. And Stevie Glee is title pain over. Lots of wild celebrations from the Rangers fans, and sure, only to be expected after 10 years. The Irish Daily Mirror on the back page, Pep, don't blow it now. I mean, obviously not going to blow the league, but they might blow the Champions League, and that's all I care about. Paris-Nice win gives Bennett yellow jersey. Sam Bennett might make an appearance later on in our performance rankings. The Irish Daily Mail, Shaw thing. And Murray set to return for Scots clash. So Rory Keane seems to think that he's definitely going to be in the squad and may even start the game. The Guardian back page, City silenced. And rotation will help England in Ashes, says Silverwood. They're already looking forward to the Ashes because things aren't going well for them at the moment. United snap City streak. Klopp, my lowest point. Jones, youth not up to it. That's Eddie Jones, and the young players in England aren't up to it. There's just one here. Band Elliott offers to assist trainer taking his place is their headline in the London Times. Even assuming the Irish racing authorities give the all clear for Foster to take over, the BHA still has the ability under the rules of racing to stop any horse running in Britain. Rule 2.2 states that the BHA may refuse to allow a horse to run in any race. The idea that Elliott, who's expected to be living on site during his suspension, is still effectively in charge at the yard despite another trainer officially holding the licence would certainly raise questions. So in England, they're not giving up on the whole notion that the punishment doesn't quite fit the crime for them and that Gordon Elliott may not be allowed to have runners at Cheltenham. That's not what the Irish papers expect. The Irish papers seem to expect that a deal has somehow been done in advance. The BHA would have been asked by the IHRB, listen, if we ban him for 12 months, suspend 6 and allow him to transfer the training of all the horses in his yard to another trainer, will you let those horses run at Cheltenham? It seems like that's what the reading between the lines in the Irish papers, that seems to have been the suggestion. Maybe the Times are getting their sources from the BHA who are still like, well, you know, things aren't guaranteed. The whole notion, though, that the idea that Elliott, who's expected to be living on site during his suspension, he's living in his house. His house is on site. Is he supposed to, like, not live at home, like, be homeless for 6 months, or like rent a gaff around the corner? Because that doesn't make any sense. But the way it's phrased there makes it sound like, oh, you know, he's not going anywhere. And then the back page of the Herald, capital gains, Dublin hit the GAA jackpot. So Sean McGoldrick has been crunching the figures, and Dublin have hit the jackpot with capital sitting pretty at top of the chart, the GAA finances, and you can see that like the orange line over the top, over here, all the way over this way. That is the amount of funding that they've got from 2011 to 2020. Total payments for the whole organisation, 219 million, and the Dubs got 20 million. Cork got 14 million. I don't know, is 1/10 for a population centre the size of Dublin too much or too little?
Or is it the third opportunity there is just right, of course. So 10% over the course of 9 years. It is a huge figure when you look at it like that. I need to look a little bit deeper into the figures to be 100% sure, but there is talk that the volume or the percentage that they've got has cooled off a little bit over the last couple of years, at least to try and bring it into line. It's a question that has come up quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, namely at Congress the weekend before last, where more equalisation of funding was a question that was put straight at the new GAA president, and he says philosophically he would be in favour of it. So while 10% for the biggest population base, that amount of population does seem okay. When it comes down to per registered GAA member, it is still completely out of kilter, and philosophically the GAA president is in favour of readdressing that. But again, it's interesting to see what happens.
Let's come back to that because it's obviously something that we want to get into in a bit more detail. OTB AM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. David Meyler is with us. David, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. How are we?
What is going wrong with Liverpool? What is it? This is not just the absence of a centre back. What is going on?
To be honest, I don't know. I watched the game yesterday. Yeah, they dominated possession, 67%, but they just don't look like scoring. And they look a shell of themselves. It's just madness to be, when you watch them, and just to think this is the same team that, dominated the Premier League last season. The year before, lost obviously to Manchester City by a point, but they were still there and thereabouts. It's remarkable. It's hard to fathom. It's hard to put a finger on it. It seems to me like that. The only thing I could probably come up with is there's something going on behind the scenes, that somebody's not happy somewhere in the the change room is not happy. Because they aren't playing as a collective group, as a team. They're just too many individuals, and obviously I know Jurgen made 7 changes yesterday, of course, to freshen up. They've got a big game on Wednesday against Leipzig, but it's a risky game, putting all your baskets one egg to win the Champions League, thinking like, to just kind of give up. I won't say they've given up on the top 4, but I think you even against Fulham, who are in, I won't say fantastic form, they've played good football, but the results haven't been fantastic for them. But they've got their tails up at the moment, and they are fighting for their lives. They were always going to make it difficult for Liverpool. And if you saw Harrison Reed's interview after, he said he wanted it more. And of course, look, it's easy to say that when you kind of win the game, but it almost felt like that. They were fighting for everything. They were throwing their bodies on the line. And even when Fulham were in possession of the ball, they looked good. They waited for their opportunities to counter-attack Liverpool. But something's not right somewhere. I don't know what it is. Before one of you asked, no, I've not asked anyone or anything. Something's not right.
The decision not to pick or to mix the teams up for today and Tuesday, we're going to hear from Brian Kerr a little bit later on. He was making the point that it's dangerous because it sends that message, as you said there, to everybody, that maybe this game matters a little bit less for whatever reason, particularly against a team. It wasn't a mid-table team who were safe and already thinking about the summer. It was a team who were absolutely fighting for their lives and for their livelihood. So it was dangerous. But at the same time, if you're Klopp, realistically, the Champions League is it now for them this season. And the Champions League is so weird, and Liverpool's form has been so weird that, they can draw and they can lose on Tuesday 1-0, or they can lose 2-1 or 3-2 or whatever and go through. And it's a really good result because they're into the last 8 of the Champions League, and they're a team who will have Fabinho back, and they're a team who will have Henderson back after the international break. And I don't know, you've got to try and pick through the carcass of this season to rescue something. If I'm Klopp, I'm thinking, okay, the league form is so bad. If we could just win 5 matches between now and the end of the season, we might win the Champions League.
Maybe, but even as he said yesterday in his post-match interview, he said, forget about finishing top 4 or winning anything. He said, we need to win football games. That's the big thing. Liverpool have lost 6 at home. You look at their wonderful record before that, where every team feared going to Anfield. Can you imagine yesterday, if you're a Fulham player, even Scott Parker as manager, when the team sheets get announced, it's usually say 2 o'clock or whatever, like an hour before kickoff. I'm just going off at 3 o'clock kickoff. I know it was 2 yesterday, but they'd have gone in, they'd seen the back 4, Nico Williams, Phillips and whatever, and you're just thinking, we've got a chance here. That's the thing. And they'd have fancied themselves. I know there's been, look, it's well documented, a lot of injuries, but to see kind of Mane on the bench, Firmino's out. But if you had even when Mane come on, he brings that energy, and that's why he's one of the best in the world in his position. That I don't think Jurgen can afford to rest anyone. I think you've got to play them. And look, it is tough. The demands are hard with the amount of games that they're having to play, but Liverpool aren't in a position to be rotating. Of course, look, I know you said Tuesday. The game is Wednesday against Leipzig, isn't it?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. But what's to say, if Leipzig beat Liverpool, then it's well, what then? I know Liverpool have got, 2-goal lead or whatever, but it's a risky game. It really is. I imagine, look, I think everybody just kind of wants to get the season over and done with. So, the Liverpool players can probably take a break and, spend that time off. It's been frantic, but they've not this since I think the turn of November, December, they've just not been nowhere near good enough. They don't look like scoring. The players just seem to run out of ideas. It's kind of almost hit and hope stuff. But at the same time, this team will be back. They have a superb manager. They're all still incredible players. I've no doubt they'll bounce back. It's just taking a lot longer than we expected.
Will it be this team that bounces back, David? Do you see changes either within the squad or from outside the squad this summer to ensure that they do get back?
I do think there'll be fresh blood flowing in. I do think they'll look to sign a forward, whether that be someone who plays out wide on either wing or a striker. I definitely think they'll look to, of course, Gini Wijnaldum, who's probably been Liverpool's most consistent player this season. You know, his contract situation is still up in the air. Whether or not he'll go or stay, that's one thing. But if he does go, then Liverpool are going to have to probably sign another midfielder. Of course, look, we've seen with Naby Keita, as much as he's a cracking little player, he does pick up far too many injuries and he can't get that consistent run. So they're going to need cover. I imagine new faces come in, whether or not, you know, they'll sell one of the big boys. Of course, look, that Mohamed Salah one is always there, isn't it? There's talks of Real Madrid want him, or, you know, whether or not he wants to go. Of course, I was on Saturday with the lads talking about his agent, you know, coming out. Is he trying to push for a move? You just don't know. It'll be kind of one of those we'll have to watch this space. Because Liverpool do need fresh faces. They need something to kind of bolster the squad. If you look back a few years ago when they saw Coutinho bringing in Van Dijk, Alisson, that was the lift they needed. Maybe they're at that point now where they need another new couple of faces just to freshen it up and, you know, actually get these boys back to the heights that we know they can hit.
Have you any concerns about Klopp staying?
No. I think, like, there's no... My pals always joke, like, would we get rid of him or whatever? And I said, no. I think the only fear any Liverpool fan would have is if Jurgen decides his time is up. Of course, that's his individual decision. I don't get the impression that he's thinking that way. But, like, Liverpool fans be desperate for Jurgen to stay. What he's, you know, accomplished over the last few seasons, he's delivered a trophy that no other Liverpool manager could deliver in Premier League history. You know, that... I'm desperate for him to stay. He's, you know, one of the best managers in the world. Of course, you want him leading the team. You just hope that Jurgen still feels the same.
Let's move on and talk about Manchester United, because we had certainly been critical of Solskjaer over the last couple of weeks for not rotating, and particularly for second legs in Europa Leagues. And you'd see Bruno out there, and then they'd play a game against top six and it'd finish 0-0, and Bruno would get slaughtered for not being as creative as he could be or looking tired. And I was like, well, it's kind of the manager's responsibility to not play all these players in all these games. And then, lo and behold, the last 5 or 6 games where they've looked really rubbish or kind of average or mediocre or not very creative, they've been rope-a-doping us and rope-a-doping Manchester City, and they come out and they smack them in the mouth twice, and you'd have to say deservedly win the game.
Oh, 100%. United were... I think it was probably the near perfect performance from United yesterday. Everything went their way, but they fully deserved it. You know, across the back four from Luke Shaw, Wan-Bissaka, the Maguire Lindelof defended really well, frustrated Manchester City, limited them to a lot of chances. Okay, you know, people will say Bruno got the penalty. Everyone's quick to jump on that. I think it's his 8th penalty of the season. But still, from 1 to 11, all of them, they just looked bang on it. I'd said, you know, I imagine that James, Martial and Rashford, and then you look at Martial, I think yesterday summed up Martial's frustration with the United fans, was how superb he was in his hold-up play, his link-up play, you know, being strong, getting hold of the ball, holding off players, linking play well. It's just if United could get that on a consistent level, then he could be incredible. I think that's the frustrating thing. But, you know, Manchester City won on a 21 win streak, and then United just kind of went out with their, you know, mentality, their tactics, and got it spot on. I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer deserves a lot of credit for the way that he set them up, the way they played, everything about it. They limited Manchester City, and, you know, as Pep said, like, after, you have to give credit to United because they were brilliant.
Like, it's almost more impressive what they did in the third quarter of the game, where they had plenty of the ball even though they were in a really comfortable position, David. Like, that takes bravery, I'd imagine, to actually go there, to press from the very start, to actually have a bit of ball in the second half and realise that Manchester City would always be there to catch them on the break. Like, is this really just a setup that is geared towards a possession-based team like Manchester City and just simply cannot work against some of the lesser teams in the Premier League?
No, I don't think it can work against, you know, the lesser teams. If you look at anyone, say, in the bottom 6, 7, like you go back to kind of Crystal Palace, who will defend deep. The beauty of United's football has always been kind of quick counter-attack. And if you look back to, the Rooney, Ronaldo, Tevez, those were some of the beautiful moments where they would defend that slight bit deep, but then when they could break, they break a pass. And that was something Solskjaer, referenced after the game, that they wanted to kind of go back to basics. And when you've got players like Rashford, James, Martial, who are all very quick, it suited United. And it's like to City, okay, you can have the ball, but you're not going to go anywhere with it. And they just frustrated the life from them. And then, as you said, it wasn't a case of, let's just sit in the edge of our box. When United had the ball, they were actually very good in possession. They kept hold of it well. A couple of pundits referred it. They played with a swagger. They did. They frustrated City. And when they had time to give the ball, they knocked it around. They were fully credited of their performance. I won't say they made City, they made an unbeatable team. I went into the game watching it thinking, there's no way United can beat City. The form they're in, the way they're playing, everything is going for City. But United just put in a performance that, it was long overdue for them, probably against, the other top 6 teams, obviously losing to Arsenal and Tottenham, but the rest of the games have been draws to go out and put in a performance. It was interesting as well, Bruno talking about, if you look back at the other games, obviously the one he referenced was Liverpool. Alisson makes 2 key saves. Yesterday when they got those chances, if you look at the Luke Shaw goal, they took the chances. In other games, they've not taken those chances. So sometimes you can kind of play well, not win, then you can play poorly and win. But yesterday they got it right and they played, they were excellent and they deserved the win.
Can we talk about Martial? Sorry, just on that, because the frustration that you're talking about, Owen's making the point, he's kind of the embodiment of the Manchester United season, that, he'll be brilliant for ages or no good for ages, and you're not quite sure which one you're going to get. What do you do as a coach to try and get a 25-year-old who you've invested so much time and effort and money at this stage into, how do you turn him into somebody who can do that week in, week out?
It's $1 million question, isn't it, Ger? There's no doubting the boy has bags of ability. I still remember back his debut against Liverpool coming on, turning to, I think it was Nathaniel Klein and skirtle inside out, and then he slots it past Mignolet. There's no doubting it. It's just, the only thing you could probably take of it is confidence with him. You remember, was it post-lockdown when he came back, he was scoring for fun, and obviously that dried up. He's still, it's 9 games now without a goal. Of course, Solskjaer, when the team are winning, he wouldn't be too concerned about it, but you want him to score. He had 2 opportunities yesterday. That one, of course, he goes one-on-one. After McTominay's foul, the ball pops to him. You fancy him to score, and then there was another one that comes to the back post for the header, and he doesn't really make contact with it. But it's just a case of, Solskjaer's just got to kind of, keep stroking the ego. You could see, there's never much emotion from Anthony Martial. You never really kind of see him upset or smile or angry or anything. But it was quite interesting that when he came off yesterday, obviously Solskjaer greeted him and there was a smile, and then he's going up the steps to sit down the bench, and obviously all the backroom staff, the other subs, whatever, giving him their, their approval and their praise. And, there was a smile in him, which is only a good thing. You're hoping then that confidence will build up in him and then he can kick on, because if Solskjaer can get him playing like that for the rest of the season, it'll be huge to United.
It almost seemed as if Martial had a much clearer role yesterday than he does most of the time. That it was we're going to counter-attack quite a bit and you're going to be the focal point of that. Is it just clear direction? Is it the clear, defined number 9 role that Martial likes to be given?
I don't think much would change. Whether you're playing United's way of playing, say, versus City as opposed to Sheffield United, or even the midweek game against Palace, I don't think anything will change. I think they'll still want to play their style. Of course, look, you're going to have to slightly adapt, because if you play against the Leicester side, you're going to have less of the ball, as opposed to Man City, who are going to keep the possession and keep moving the ball. So you're going to have to wait, be patient and wait for your times to counter-attack. You can just imagine, though, when you're playing against teams that do sit deep, the spaces in between defence and midfield, for Martial to try and get, hold of the ball, try and make something happen, those gaps are going to be tighter. You're going to have midfielders steaming back. So it can be frustrating, it can be hard. Whereas City then, will overload forward. You've seen yesterday several times, even John Stones coming out, he's joining the attack, which then you look at, that's the centre-half who's probably meant to be up against Martial, that he then has more space to be able to get hold of the ball and isolate maybe a defender one-on-one, where we know he's capable of beating players. So it just depends on certain circumstances will be able to suit him better. But I don't think United's mentality won't have changed going into that game. The only difference is we're not going to have as much possession as we would have against Crystal Palace midweek.
Do we see a different sort of game? Do we see a different result if Fernandinho plays yesterday?
It was quite interesting. Guardiola said, how do you stop Bruno Fernandes? And he said, by keeping possession. I think that's why he played Rodri over Fernandinho. Rodri's the typical Spanish growing up in that era where they just dominate possession, they keep the ball and they keep it moving. I think it's very hard for me to criticise anything Guardiola does for the success he's had. But that kind of Fernandinho is that rough and rugged holding midfielder who gets into people's faces and he frustrates the life out of them. Now, do you say he got it wrong? Should he have played Fernandinho over Rodri? Maybe. But it's easy to say that when you lose. But certainly with Fernandinho, he's someone that gets in and around people. And you could imagine him kicking lumps out of, Bruno or Martial or Rashford or one of those in the game. He's a different type of holding midfielder. And I do think, City are different when he doesn't play for them. So, of course, look, when you're analysing it, if Fernandinho played, it's a different game then. But it's easy to say that, City, again, are on a 21 winning streak. So why would you overthink it going into the game? You'd expect your team to go out and, perform and produce a result. So it's a catch-22, really.
It does seem at times that Manchester City can get caught like this. It tends to happen in the Champions League where they don't have a plan B because their plan A is so good. So what can they learn from yesterday, David, going into this closing stages of the season where they will want to add the Champions League to their trophy cabinet?
I don't think they'd have learned a lot. The first goal, of course, is, Jesus gives away the penalty after losing possession. The second one is the counter-attack. Obviously, Henderson's distribution out to Shaw, Cancelo dives in. But even so, that's the way Manchester City play. I think the only thing Guardiola would say is when we are behind, stay patient. He had said, I'm far more happier with the performance today, even though we got nothing, than, against West Ham, where we probably didn't deserve to win the game the way they played. So it is, I wouldn't say he's learned too much from him. I think it would be a gentle reminder for that squad that, obviously we're on this brilliant streak, but we're not untouchable. They're still on to win 4 competitions. Whether or not they'll win all 4 of them. Obviously the big one's the Champions League that they want. You'd still expect them to win the domestic treble. But it could be a blessing in disguise for City. Losing that, it'd be kind of okay, refocus the minds. We're not unbeatable. Teams can come and cause us problems like United did, which could be a massive thing for City going forward. It could be that just like I said, a gentle reminder to say okay, we need to be bang at it every game here. And they're good. Like Pep said, we want to now go and win the next game. So you wouldn't be surprised if they were to go and start another winning streak. They're still wonderful players, and fresh off that streak, which is incredible.
Can I ask about Gareth Bale and the conversation that we've been having all summer, all season long, where it's wow, what a waste of money that was. Isn't it terrible? What a waste of a career that the end of Gareth Bale's time is going to be. Real pity that he couldn't ever get back to the level of form and energy and actually the interest in football. And then all of a sudden in the last 4 weeks, it's wow, what's going on? Was it just that he just needed to play some football? And is he are we overreacting a little bit to the goals and the performances at the moment, or is Gareth Bale getting pretty close to Gareth Bale?
I don't think Gareth Bale will be the old Gareth Bale. I think look, the amount of games he's played, the injuries he's picked up, it's going to take its effect on him. But certainly it does look like a case of someone who's been playing regular football. He's really benefited from it. That was probably the big thing, that when he was playing, it was 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, 60 minutes another of them. Now he's in, and he does look like a breath of fresh air for them. The goals he's scoring, he's involved in everything. So certainly it's a massive plus. If you had to look back to the game he played in the FA Cup, was kind of like the turning point. People were very critical of him against Marine, where he didn't put in any kind of performance, and you're thinking, these are, semi-professional footballers. And then from then on, he's really kicked on. And Mourinho's found that way. Maybe it was a case of just getting him minutes. But we know Gareth Bale of 2021 is still far better than a lot of, players in the Premier League. Yes, he's not going to be as exciting as he was in his last Spurs or the first few years in Madrid. But certainly there is still an exceptional player in there.
Like, it's that time of the year where Spurs are going to have to talk to Real Madrid about taking his contract for next season as well. He's under contract again at Real Madrid, so that he could easily just go back to Madrid and play golf and not play for them. Or maybe Zidane is gone and he can go back to whoever is going to be there. But 5 weeks ago, you would have said under no circumstances would any Premier League team be interested in having Gareth Bale. Is that the little fear that teams might have, that Spurs might have, that they get Gareth Bale for the first half of the season rather than the second half of the season? Or could there be 2 or 3 seasons where Bale is a really top quality, if not superstar, but top quality Premier League player who's going to be scoring and creating goals at the level that he's at the moment, which is, a very high level?
No, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? What is going to happen with him after the season ends? I just hope, for Gareth's sake, he doesn't kind of go back to Madrid and, it becomes about money trying to leave or whether or not he stays. I think the most important thing for footballers playing football, and now Gareth is playing, so surely he's going to, and when he wakes up this morning after yesterday's performance, he's going to think, I this is what I love, that he'll want to continue it. Whether or not that will be at Spurs, who knows? Surely, no, he's earned enough money in his career.
It should be just about having crack.
Well, I was going to say just about playing football. I think he has the crack on the golf course.
Well, I meant, on the pitch, yeah.
But at the same time, it's got to be about playing football. I think Gareth's the same age as me, so he's 31.
He's 32. 32 in July, I just checked it there, yeah.
Yeah, he's the same age as me, he's 89. But surely, you're in your last few years. He's got enough, he's earned enough money. Just go and play football, go enjoy it. And, look, we've all heard the sums of money he's been on at Real Madrid. So just go, and if Spurs want to keep you, I'll be pushing hard to stay there. And of course, look, with the performance he's put in the last few weeks, there certainly would be a number of clubs queuing up to take him. So I just hope that he continues to play, and then once the summer comes, if Zidane stays on, it's just to say, look, thanks for everything, I'm off, and just go and enjoy your last few years, because he's an exciting footballer. There's no doubting it. Watching him over the years, he's an incredible, talented player. So you just kind of hope that he does come out and leave Real Madrid and go play.
All of a sudden, them having form and the form that they've had over the last couple of league games, they're back in the hunt for finishing 4th. They're 2 points behind Chelsea. I kind of expect Chelsea to catch Leicester, to be honest, even though they're 6 points behind. So you wouldn't put money on them, but you would say that if their form continues like this, and obviously Harry Kane is fit and playing well, a stereotypical Harry Kane performance with beautiful goal, top corner, thanks very much, almost effortlessly, that you wouldn't be terribly surprised if Mourinho actually squeaked them into the Champions League next season.
No, you wouldn't. That's the scary thing, isn't it? As much as Spurs haven't been fantastic and they've been kind of ploughing along, now they're starting to pick up form and they're putting in, they're scoring a lot of goals. They look a lot more solid at the back. That you wouldn't be surprised if they made top 4. Mourinho will know that's been his aim since the start of the season. So a lot of it is timing with, I spoke about Manchester City losing this game. That could be the little jolt or the reset button for them to kick on, to think we're not, Tottenham's results over the last few weeks could be their incentive now that, they've got their tails up and they're playing well. They could actually find themselves in the top 4. Like, as you said, Leicester have had all sorts to deal with their injuries. Everyone has almost got that thing on their mind. It's not going to be again. They're not going to fall away again. But Spurs are like you said, are coming after them. Chelsea are coming after them. There's just, it's going to be tough. But I wouldn't be surprised if Spurs managed to get in there.
One other point to note from Tottenham last night was Matt Doherty actually looking good, David, and that's one slight note of encouragement on International Month. Obviously at the weekend we saw the South American window go. I see Alan Shearer this morning at The Athletic calling for the international window to be scrapped. And to be honest with you, it'd be kind of like getting out of an exam the night before if this international window will be called off. If you get a push back later into the year, I presume Stephen Kenny would take it, David. But at the same time, Matt Doherty's form at the weekend is a little bit of a bright spark when they badly need it.
No, 100%. Look, I spoke to JD and the boys Saturday about Matt in the sense that, like, he'd not been playing regularly, you know, and it was kind of like, how does Matt turn this around? You go and you play and you put in a performance like you do. That's only good for him, because we want, like, I want to see every Irish player playing as much as they can, because it's good for them and it benefits Irish football. So Matt obviously playing, hopefully he can stay in the team now, kick on and keep putting in performances, because when they get, you know, when they come to play with Ireland, you want them. I think the best example I could use was if you looked at Liverpool yesterday, for the lads who came in, you know, James Milner, Naby Keita, Nico Williams, Nat Phillips has played to a certain extent, but they looked, you know, lads who hadn't played regular football, who haven't been playing week in, week out. You can see that they're not on it. They're a touch off it. They're trying to get themselves up to speed. And that, you know, you've got to reference that when it comes to international football. If lads are getting called in by Stephen and they're not playing regular football, it is very difficult to turn up and be able to put in a performance over 90 minutes, because you're not up to match speed. A bit like Gareth Bale, in the sense that, was it a case of did he need games? He now has gotten games and he's up to speed. So, like, seeing Matt yesterday obviously get in and play and do well, the more Irish players who are playing can only stand us in good stead. And of course that's what Stephen wants, because once they get called in, then, you know, they're match fit, they're match sharp, which will only benefit us in the long run.
Would we benefit from the international window being cancelled? Do you think it's a good idea?
It's a tough one, because obviously, you know, certain countries are obviously on the, you know, there's different rules. The last thing you want is, like, for international football to say, like, certain countries can't have players because clubs won't release them. And then you're thinking, it's a bit of a hoorah. If it's cancelled, it's cancelled. Of course, I would love to see, you know, I'm excited to see how Stephen's going to, you know, face the challenge of Serbia and whatever, and how they're going to do in the World Cup. Something, you know, I'm interested in. So I wouldn't like it to be cancelled, but then I don't want teams to not have their full, you know, availability, and I don't want players being held back by clubs. So if that's going to be the case, then I think they should probably postpone it for a certain amount of time and push it back, yeah.
Yeah, all right, that does make a lot of sense. We definitely don't want any outbreaks in the aftermath of people travelling away and bringing it back in. David, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, guys.
David Moore, give me some thoughts there. This Monday morning at 8:47, Meath GAA star Vikki Wall is standing by. She's going to join us in a couple of minutes' time before 9 o'clock. We're also going to hear from Kenny Cunningham a little bit later on about the Manchester derby at 9:30. First, though, here's Brian Kerr about his thoughts on what's gone wrong at Liverpool.
Brian Kerr, we're speaking after Liverpool's latest home defeat, 6 consecutive defeats now at Anfield, 1-0 against Fulham. I suppose when you look at where Fulham are, where they're positioned in the Premier League table, this isn't a game that Liverpool should have been losing.
No, but on the other side of that, Stephen, their current form since 2021 started would have them in the bottom 4 in the league, given the amount of points. I think it's only 10 points from 11 games in the Premier League. So while you would say you wouldn't expect Fulham, who are in the bottom 3, to beat Liverpool, the champions, on recent form and displays, it isn't a big surprise. Fulham have been playing very well. They lost to Tottenham on Thursday night, 1-0. They were a bit unlucky. They were lucky to get in at half-time, only 1 down to Spurs, but they played very well in the second half. They had that goal disallowed by Maja that was unfortunate. And prior to that, they'd gone 5 games unbeaten in the Premier League. They'd won a couple, they'd drawn 3. And they'd shown themselves a decent side for a good while now. They hadn't been getting the results, probably the performances deserved. They'd only won 4 games before today, a lot of draws, but they've played well. So Liverpool haven't been playing well, but it's a bad position for Liverpool to be in, once again, losing at Anfield. It's not the same. There's no crowds the game. There's no the passion, the volatility, the intimidation of the opposition. There's none of that now at Liverpool at the moment, but it's still an extraordinary statistic that they've lost 6 games in a row at Anfield.
Yeah, and Fulham should be credited for their performance. As I mentioned in the commentary, they've kept 5 clean sheets now in 7 matches. You know, they've got really good centre backs there, and Adarabioyo and Anderson beside him, and of course then you've got Lamina playing in front of them as well. And as well as that, you've just got players who are decent full backs as well, players coming back and helping out with the defensive effort. It just seems with Liverpool now, when you watch them in games, that if you plug up that central area and force them out wide, they seem to struggle.
I think there's a lot of things wrong with Liverpool at the moment. If you take it from the back, the goalkeeper hasn't been his reliable self. You would have said he was the best goalkeeper in the world, or in the top 3 goalkeepers in the world until fairly recently. And then he's had a few disasters, a fault in goals against Manchester City in particular. You probably felt today he was a fault in the goal. I think you were being a bit harsh, and it was great accuracy in the shot from Lamina. It was right low into the corner. He was covering the near side because the free kick had come to the near post, near side. Robertson headed it away. But I think you take the defence, we know about their injury problems, constant changes. We're up to partnership number 21 today in terms of the centre-back partnership, which is really is extraordinary in the season, where they've had to keep changing the centre-backs because of injuries. But they haven't looked solid defensively. The midfield hasn't played with the same intensity as it has. The midfield has also been changed because Henderson and Fabinho, who have been needed at the back, because the other centre-halves who filled in for the regulars weren't reliable. So it hasn't been good in there. And the front 3 have been misfiring, haven't been shown the levels they've shown for the last 3 years. And Jota has been out injured until this week. So there's no area of the pitch has performed. You know, go back to your point about give them the width, let them cross it. And if we deal with that, we won't have a problem. That was one of the areas where Liverpool were so potent, I would say, in recent years. The crossing and delivery from Andy Robertson and Alexander Arnold on the right hand side. Now that has declined to a great degree as well. We've not seen the same quality in the deliveries. They've had to defend a bit more. Other teams have learned how to exploit the space in behind the two of them. And today we saw, young Nico Williams playing in the right back position, nowhere near as effective as Alexander Arnold. Had loads of the ball in the match, couple of half decent crosses, but not enough. I'm sure I would say he had 30 to 40 opportunities to cross the ball in the match. I'd say if he got 3 good ones in, was about as much as he did. So, front 3 not firing. Salah, good, decent enough threat in the first half, but faded as it went on. Jota didn't really get going, I would say. Shaqiri bits and pieces. And brought on Mane, and he looked like his confidence is strained too. So there's no area the team is functioning well at the moment, Stephen.
How much criticism, and it is hard to criticise a manager like Jurgen Klopp, who's achieved so much in the game, and who was really, he turned Liverpool Football Club around from where they were when he came in there. And he's won the Champions League, he's won the Premier League. He doesn't really have anything to prove to anybody. But how much criticism does he get for the team selection today? Because he had a back 4 there with 3 players there who haven't even reached double figures in Premier League appearances between the 3 of them so far this season. Was that a mistake?
Well, we'll have to hear what he has to say after the game today and to justifying that selection. There may have been, I'd say there was definitely an eye on the game on Wednesday, RB Leipzig, where they won the first leg 2-0, and I think they're playing the same venue this week that they played the first match in. I think it's imperative that they get through to keep the season going at this stage for them. That's the reality of it. They're out of the cup competitions. Champions League is the only trophy that they're in contention in. But I think if that was the decision that he made, to put out a weakened team today to preserve players for Wednesday, I don't think that was the right decision, because I think you've got to keep going when you still had 11 matches left, 33 points at stake. There's still every opportunity for them, Liverpool, to make the top 4 and the Champions League spot for next year on the league form. But that results today damages that the potential for that. And it's not just that they're a few points behind
the fourth place team, Chelsea, I think it is at the moment.
Yeah.
There's also a situation where, you know, you've got other teams. You've got Everton and Leicester and Manchester United. You've got West Ham up there as well. Aston Villa not too far away. You've got a lot of other teams
who don't have European games either.
No, and who have their eye on that prize. So it's it didn't work out for him today. You know, he is probably going to have to answer some questions as to why he picked the three young defenders that he did. Ultimately, was that the problem? No, but it contributed in that there was a consistent problem in the first half, and really Fulham made the more obvious opportunities in the first half. Liverpool had a couple of half chances, but their best attempt was probably Shaqiri's strike from the free kick, whereas Fulham had lots of chances where Lookman got in around the back on the left-hand side, cut the ball back across the goal, and no finish came from it. So, you know, it was a bad day for Liverpool, and certainly Klopp will be asked some, you would hope, more analytical questions than the general run-of-the-mill stuff. I think he needs to be asked, why did he play the team he did, and was it with both eyes on the prize of winning against Leipzig rather than winning today?
Leipzig went top of the Bundesliga for a short time yesterday before Bayern Munich beat Dortmund in the big clash in Germany. Do you think Julian Nagelsmann, obviously boosted by that win at the weekend, but also watching Fulham beating Liverpool at Anfield, do you think him and his squad now are going to be really gunning for this game? And do you think there's a danger that Liverpool could be knocked out of the Champions League despite having a 2-0 lead?
Well, I think Liverpool were deserved winners in the first leg. They played well on the night, and I think they deserved to win the game 2-0. Leipzig, I think Liverpool tactically dealt with them very well. Defensively were solid, and showed that Leipzig aren't all they were made out to be. Last year they looked a very inventive attacking team, playing different systems. You couldn't predict what the shape of the team would be, whether it be, you know, a three at the back, 3-4-3. Generally they play it, but sometimes they played it with a forward at the back, but the two full backs pushed on anyway. Angelino on the right hand side, particularly dangerous, but struggled for a centre forward, a real centre forward. Poulsen isn't a prolific centre forward by any means, and dependence on Angelino and Mukiele getting forward on the flanks, but no real goal scorer. And I think Liverpool exploited that. So, but I think Leipzig and Nagelsmann will look at it and say, this is an opportunity. We get the first goal. How will Liverpool react? I think if they get the first goal in the match, Liverpool are quite capable of reacting badly. They have to be nervous. Their confidence has to be drained. There's no area of the team functioning particularly well. And, I think that's got to be the main point for Leipzig. Get the first goal and play from there. From Liverpool's point of view, it's the same for them. They need to score the first goal and hopefully put the tie to bed, playing the counter-attack, allow Leipzig to come on to them from that position. But if they allow Leipzig to come on to them at 2-0 and Leipzig get the first goal and the match go back to 2-1, you would almost fear for Liverpool in their current position.
Yeah, Brian Kerr fearing for Liverpool in their current position, in conversation with Stephen Doyle after the game yesterday, which of course was live on Off the Ball on News Talk. It is 8:58 this morning. We'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number. You can text that, you can WhatsApp it, whatever you want. You can always, of course, leave a comment on YouTube, and we'll deal with some of the comments in just a little while. Now, the GPA are this morning announcing that 100 female inter-county players are to benefit from scholarship funding. This is double the number previously available before the merger of the GPA and the WGPA. One of the GPA's next-gen leaders is Vikki Wall from Meath, and I'm delighted to say Vikki is with us this morning. Good morning to you. How are you doing, Vikki?
Morning, how are you?
Good, thanks. What is a next-gen leader as a matter of interest?
Yeah, so it's a new programme that the WGPA and the GPA have set up. I suppose it's to get current players, young players, I think the age bracket was between 20 and 25, and just, I suppose, integrate us into the operations behind the WGPA and the GPA and how they fight for things like equality and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting programme so far.
Okay, so it's actually getting you guys involved in the workings of the association.
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose we're in the early stages now. It's a year-long programme. We've kind of filtered ourselves into teams based on the different pillars within the WGPA and the GPA. So yeah, it's time.
The other thing that they're announcing today is the increase in the surge in the number of scholarships. And I guess this is the immediate dividend that you get from aligning two organisations that were in their own rights very powerful, but actually by coming together you see that magnified quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been lucky enough to receive it the last few years at WGPA, and I know that they've increased it from 55 members to 100 members this year. So, I mean, that's nearly doubling it. So I think if that's a sign of the amalgamation, I think it's going to be positive going forward anyway.
Yeah, it seemed like the amalgamation was a fairly obvious thing to do. And it seems like the players are kind of driving the organisation at the structural level forwards, kind of dragging them kicking and screaming behind you.
Yeah, look, I think the WGPA and GPA are doing it the right way. They're getting players involved in every process of the way. And I think obviously the players are the key people in these decisions. So I think it's obviously so critical to have them involved in those decisions.
Was it an obvious thing for you as a player to also get involved in the administration? Because a lot of players are a little bit reticent. They're like, oh, I'll do that when I'm finished playing. But actually, if you're in the midst of it now, having your voice heard is kind of almost more important than when you're retired.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, look, there's been plenty of things about ladies football and camogie people giving out the last few years on Twitter and the likes of that. So I think I probably would have been one of those people. So I think it's important to put my money where my mouth is. So just to actually be involved in it and to try make an actual difference. So I think that was one of the key things that made me want to get involved with this Next Gen Leader programme, yeah. One
of the other reasons that people don't get involved is that they think that it'll come back on them, and that if their performances dip in any way, somebody's going to point out, you know, too busy getting involved in the union to actually play well. But you've just had a pretty good year there, Vikki, so maybe, you know, you're the perfect person to be talking to today.
Yeah, no, I've had a good year. So yeah, we won the All-Ireland with Meath, so that we finally got over that step of intermediate and we're up to senior this year. So yeah, we're absolutely delighted.
It clearly wasn't a distraction then.
No, well, it didn't start till after the All-Ireland, so I don't know if that has anything to play with it. But yeah, not a distraction at the moment anyway.
You mentioned there you finally got over the line last year. Can you talk us through that process of knocking at the door for so long and then finally the relief of getting the job done?
Yeah, so I definitely think we went through a transitional period with Meath in the last few years. We lost 2 All-Irelands there, 2018, 2019 against Tyrone, and tipped 2 really strong teams. So I think the third year you kind of just have to go out, shackles off, just play with absolutely no fear, and I think we were able to do that. We were able to perform in Croke Park this year at long last, so yeah, we were delighted.
It's really interesting seeing these teams come along and stumble at the final hurdle year after year. Is there a definite change that happens in year 3, or is it just a collective getting stronger? And I guess the age profile of the team being in a good place those first couple of years as well.
Yeah, look, we still have a really young team. I mean, like, Dougie playing beside me, she's only she's 18, like, so we definitely do have a lot of young players. But I think the first year going in, you're kind of oblivious to, like, I never would have even played in Croke Park before that or experienced that kind of thing. So you're almost taking in the occasion more so than the job at hand. And I think the second year, I think we really had our heads screwed on. I just think Tip were stronger on the day, and they took their goal opportunities. So I suppose year 2, we weren't going to enjoy the occasion. We really had a job to do. And then I think when you get back there for the third chance, you're kind of thinking, like, we really, really, really have to do it this time. So yeah, I think it was a mix of experience and then hunger as well this year that got us over the line.
I'm sure people have seen the goal in the final. Like, I mean, there's been some unbelievable goals scored in last year's championship. The solo off the left, the shot off the right into the top right corner at a pretty pivotal point in the game as well. Like, do you remember thinking at that point, Vikki, God, this is an absolute worldie I'm after scoring?
Absolutely not. I was like, there, you need to get another score straight away after. We were still down, I think, when we got that goal, so that definitely wasn't going through my head. But yeah, look, Sarah just got off the pitch. I suppose there's a bit of anger there seeing her leave the pitch, and yeah, I think we all knew we needed a goal. So whether it was going to come from me or someone else, I think we needed a goal at that stage.
So it's your sister who's after going off injured, and you're like, right, I'm angry now, and that's the product of it.
Yeah, we'll put it down to that. I can give the credit to Sarah for that one. So
it's interesting when we look at that 3-year period of knocking on the door and then getting over the line last year. It's a bit longer than that, though, isn't it? It goes back to 2015, I think, and that experience against Cork. For people who probably aren't realised, could you tell us a little bit about that and how long this project was in the making for you to get back to a level where you're really satisfied with being one of the best teams around?
Yeah, so I think the Meath team went through a transitional period where a lot of the older girls retired. I mean, they'd given 10, 12 years of service, so there was absolutely no begrudgment there. But I joined 2015, the panel, when I was 16, yeah. So in the first 3 years, I think we had 3 different sets of management as well. So I suppose that had an effect on it as well. But yeah, we played a game against Cork in the senior championship. We lost by 40 points, and it was up there one of the worst days that I've been involved in playing with Meath. You know, it was really tough to take, and we were asking girls to play a few days before the game. You know, I was asking their names on the day of the game. So it's definitely not an ideal situation when you're going out against the likes of Cork, who are literally phenomenal and have always been. So that was definitely a tough moment, and I think we had a few other tough moments. You know, when I joined the first 2 years, we went down from senior to intermediate, and then Division 2, Division 3. So it's taken a while. We're back up in Division 2, back up in senior now, but it definitely wasn't an easy road. And I think maybe that has a part to play in the determination in the team at the moment. There still is a good chunk of us that have been involved in that period where we got relegated for both those grades. So I think that hurt will definitely drive us on now and hopefully stick with us in senior.
It must have been a weird scenario to be ringing people to come play for their county. Like, I'd imagine that was a dream for you all along, and then you get into the inter-county squad so young, and one of the first years you're playing, you're calling up people to join you on the team.
Yeah, I think maybe I was definitely naive when I was first up there. You know, like you said, it's a dream. So I was still playing minor, but I was on the senior team, and I thought this was just the best thing. And then you turned up to training, and then there's not numbers there, or you're struggling to get a team. And I couldn't wrap my head around it. You know, I was obviously too young to be driving myself, so Dad would be driving me everywhere, and I'd kind of be like, just gobsmacked. I was like, why would people not be jumping at this opportunity? But I suppose when your team's not doing great, it's kind of easy not to get involved. Yeah, so definitely was difficult the first few years, and being so young like that, it was hard to try to understand like why you would be ringing people the day before a game to join a county team. But I think we're over that problem now, and there's really strong teams underage in Meath, so hopefully we won't be going through that period for a long time.
What changed?
Personally, I think it's down to the management we have at the moment. I think there was a few rocky periods with different managers and stuff like that, just trying to keep a collective group together. So we have Eamon Murray in now, Paul Garrigan and Shane and a few of the other lads. And I think they're the polar opposites is Paul and Eamon. You know, Eamon just wears his heart in his sleeve, and if he's happy, you'll know. If he's sad, you'll know very easily. So he's kind of the one that got all the players back together. He'd have really good relationships with all the girls in the team. So I think that was one of his strengths. And then Paul just came with just a plan. He just knew exactly what he wanted to achieve. I remember the first day when he turned up, he had PowerPoints and all, and he went through everything with us. And he showed us one thing that sticks with me is where we were out of the 32 counties in ladies football in Meath. And it just wasn't where we wanted to be, like where he thought we were ranked. So I think from the get-go, he came in and he knew what he wanted to achieve, and we've achieved a few of those things now. We're back playing senior, so I'm sure he'll be back with another plan. So yeah, we're excited for that.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what Jim McGuinness did as well. There was the Sunday Tribune had ranked every GAA county, every Gaelic football team, and Donegal were way down, kind of mid-teens or late teens, a bit like Owen's power rankings. And that was the humiliation that everybody needed to get together, and ultimately they went on to win All-Ireland. Like, is that the ambition at some point in the next couple of years, to be genuine All-Ireland contenders? Because obviously, you know, we've seen teams come and really stick it up to Dublin. Like the Dublin women's football team aren't quite as dominant, even though they've won the last 3 as the men's team. They're not entirely unbeatable.
Yeah, look, I suppose personally anyway, like I played Dublin there in 2016 Summerhill, and maybe even then when we were struggling, I still would have had a hope that we could beat them. But now definitely more so, I'm confident in the team we have that we can go up and compete. You know, I think in 2018, if we'd gone up against Tyrone, I don't think we would have survived. I think we would have come straight back down. Now I think we have the building done, and we have a good team, and we've new minors in this year, so it's fresh fresh people in on the panel. So I really do believe that we can go up to senior and properly compete. And yeah, like you say, obviously you're going up to senior. The goal is an all-out final, I think, whatever grade you're competing in.
And the other thing is that there's been a boom in coverage, so the intermediate games are now on TV as well. The reasons for people to hopefully to drop out are fewer, the support structures are better, the success of the GPA, for example, it all builds to a picture where it's much more sustainable for young women to play and to play consistently at a high level.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this year, because of the fact that people couldn't go to the games, a lot of the games were streamed, a lot of the games were on even Facebook Live or TG Kerr. And I think the fact that it was almost forced to do that, I think, like, why won't it continue? Like, even next year when hopefully people can get back to games, why wouldn't we continue to stream the games? And, you know, even the likes, I mentioned it the other day, we don't, like, if you have a match on a Sunday, you're probably not going to be travelling down to view a match and another county match that's on a Saturday just for preparation purposes. So I think even the fact that you got to sit at home on a Saturday and watch it, I think it will encourage a lot more people next year to be able to go out and get to see them, and like the increased exposure is never going to be a bad thing for the game.
Vikki, you spoke very publicly last week and very powerfully about some of the sledging that you'd suffered when you were playing Gaelic football over a number of years. I'm always interested when people decide to go public about something like this. You know, you're kind of putting yourself up as somebody who almost inadvertently becomes a leader in that area, and I think it's really important that people do stand up and do talk about these things, because, you know, just recently we've had lots of examples where social media has become a huge talking point around James McLean, for example, and the abuse that he has suffered. But actually this happens at matches too, and your examples were real life, everyday, actually in-person examples of people saying horrific stuff.
Yeah, I suppose I'm lucky in the sense that I haven't received that online. I think to be honest with you, it would be a lot more hard to deal with if it was online. I mean, that doesn't go away. At least if when you leave a match, the people leave as well. So I think the fact that we have our phones in our hands all day, every day, I think that's a serious problem. But yeah, for me personally, it was in person. It was probably more in the club scene than county scene than anything. And like I said, like it was, I don't know if I'd fully thought about it before I went on the TG Kerr interview, the effect that it was going to have. I really didn't think it would have this response, and it's been hugely positive. But yeah, look, I'm not the first person to put on weight during my leaving cert. I'm not claiming for that, but I suppose I put on a significant amount in between 2017 and 2019. It definitely affected the way I played. You know, 2015 we won the Club All Ireland, and I would have been a lot fitter then, and I suppose just the way I could play. So I think as much as the people saying things on the sideline, stuff like that, definitely did have an effect on me when I look back on it. I think after the 2019 All Ireland, it was more of a self-evaluation of, like, am I achieving what I can achieve? Am I performing to the best I can perform? And no, it wasn't. And the weight definitely did have a part to play in that. So I think, yeah, look, I think now that I'm a lot more confident in myself and who I am, I think if those things are said again, I just think it's not going to affect me, but it definitely was a learning curve and it didn't come overnight either.
We really need people not to be saying stuff, though. Like, that's,
yeah,
you know, it's none of this is anybody's business. And like, we all know the impact that talking about body image can have on anybody at any stage of their lives, but particularly when somebody's young.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a good point as well, the fact that, like, we look at a lot of the dropout rates in ladies football, and it is at those pivotal teenage years. And I think when you're that age, you are vulnerable, and like if it's something you're conscious about in your own mind, in your bedroom or something like that, like when someone's saying it in public and you're hearing it on the sideline, and you know your teammates or your family or anything you're hearing, I think it definitely does have a big impact. And I think it's something that we definitely need to probably do look into more, just because we're talking about these dropout rates. But I mean, if it's undereating, overeating, I think there's definitely there's no place for it to be mentioned on a pitch.
Vikki, was the sledging coming from the person who was marking you on the pitch? Was it just opposition players?
No, I personally probably would say it'd be more management than players. Obviously there is small amount of players, but from my own experience, it was more so managers.
That's shocking, like really shocking, that somebody who's supposed to be in a leadership position of the opposition team thought that this was somehow appropriate.
Yeah, look, I suppose I tried to look at it in the sense of, I'm obviously doing something well if they're trying to do this, but I think you can only have that mindset for so long, and I think it definitely does have an effect on you when it's a 45-year-old man standing on the sideline roaring abuse at you. And like I said, I got a phone call the next day apologising from one of them in particular. But I just think, yeah, it's a strange concept. Like, I think of my dad and myself and Sarah, who who were young female girls, and I just think if I heard my dad talking like that to anyone on my team, I think I'd just be absolutely disgusted. So yeah, it's a strange one, and I think a lot of the time, due to the management, they probably do have a relation to some of the girls in the team. So I think it is a very strange idea to think of, to when you put it in perspective of if it was my own father saying those type of things.
Yeah. Like, is there anything that can be done? You know, because, for example, there are very clear protocols in place for if a referee hears racial abuse, they are supposed to stop games and they're supposed to take action immediately. Now, I'm not sure that it happens the way that it's supposed to, but there's probably a long list of things that actually we should just say, you can't say these things. Like, on a sideline, you have a duty of care, and whatever you're saying could be very harmful to somebody. You don't know what somebody else is going through.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the ideal situation, but I just don't know how feasible that is. Especially at a GAM match, you know, it's hard to control the numbers if it's at normal times and everything like that. I had this conversation with my mum and dad over the weekend, and I suppose I'd probably talk to them a bit more about it since I have a TG car. And my mum was even saying, you know, should we probably have said something, but like, should we have said more? Like, as in she'd witnessed it, she was in the stand, she heard it as well, and she kind of was of the opinion that you don't want to be feeding into these people, you don't want to be getting involved with them and like letting them talk more, and just like she took the stance of just ignoring it and continuing on. But I suppose it's kind of hard to know what the best outcome to do is during that time.
I think that's a real generational thing, to be honest. Like, I definitely, and I'm kind of in the middle of that. So in the Sunday papers, Neil Francis was saying, "Oh, look, you know, we just need to get off social media and ignore all this stuff." And I think Brawley was saying something fairly similar about James McLean at the weekend, a bit more nuanced. And then the athletes, the Olympians, have now come up with a "don't scroll by," and they're saying, "Hang on a second, no, we're going to call this out. We're going to use our platforms to say this is unacceptable." And I kind of feel like previously I would have been, don't feed the trolls. Don't feed the trolls, they'll go away. But that actually doesn't happen. What happens is that their little circle of people who they're telling the joke for or giving the abuse, you know, to, you know, their supporters are like, yeah, that's hilarious. The right thing to do is to say, no, I'm not going to. And actually, it should have been everybody else. It shouldn't have been up to your mum and dad. In the sidelines. It should have been everybody else in the crowd going. And I think that you're right by standing up and saying, enough is enough. Why should we have to take this?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I suppose personally, I probably would have just tried to, when it was going on, maybe just get another goal or get another point, or just that's how I probably would have tried to react. I mean, it's hard not to react personally, but I know a lot of maybe my teammates and stuff like that would be on the sideline. I know on a few occasions they would have turned around and said to stop, just to give over, essentially, just because it probably, like, hearing that for them isn't nice either. You know, it's someone like we're obviously very close as a team with club or county, so yeah, I think a lot of maybe my teammates probably would have done stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know, I think it's a tricky one to deal with, and I think hindsight's a great thing. You know, after it's happened, you kind of look back and say, well, I wish I'd done this, I wish I did that. But I think when it's happening, you're probably maybe emotions take over, and it probably does affect you more so, and probably your reaction isn't how it is after you've looked back on the situation.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I think even by bringing it up now and doing the stuff on TGCar and speaking about it, it gives comfort to people who are going through something similar, and it raises the issue so that sidelines know what to do. And I don't mean that you should have gone over to them and confronted them, but certainly the people on the sideline and the other supporters who were there and the other management teams. And it certainly needs to be something that we have a conversation about, because if we don't talk about this stuff, then we never actually learn from it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as I said, I didn't expect this reaction from it, but I think it's definitely not a bad thing for it to be a topic of conversation and to be talked about. I know I was talking to Gemma Begley there the other day within the GPA, and she'd said that another Tyrone player had come out about an article that had been written about her as well, to do with weight as well. So look, if it gets a conversation started, I'm happy with that.
Vikki, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks, William.
Cheers for joining us this morning. That's Vikki Wall, obviously part of the GPA's Next Gen, and I just want to remind everybody that the merger between the GPA and the WGPA has led to almost double the amount of scholarships on offer to women's footballers and camogie players in the country. Obviously, Meath, the 2020 TGCar Intermediate All-Ireland winners, and Vikki was the Player of the Year, also named at centre forward on that team, having got promotion to the senior ranks as well. So what are we at? 20 minutes past 9 here. I want to tell you what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. a classic at 1 o'clock. Ray Boom Boom Mancini, a brilliant interview about his life and times and career. State of the Union, Keith Woods, rugby series of top quality interviews about where the state of the game was. It's funny how the stasis in World Rugby we were very excited about the fact that there might be some change imminent. Nothing has happened since, so all of those are still very prescient. The Split Season is our documentary series at 4 o'clock. OTB Gold, Joe meets Sherlock Nan at 6. And then tonight is live. It's Monday night, looking back on a fairly spectacular weekend of stuff. It's 19 minutes past 9 this morning. We've got the Gillette Performance Rankings.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB.
For Sterling! Raheem Sterling!
OTB live commentary. Never miss the action right here on OTB Sports Radio.
Tom Watson, you're welcome to Golf Weekly.
Hey, this is going to be fun.
Very happy to say European captain and, of course, three-time major winner Padraig Carrington joins us.
Today's special guest on Golf Weekly is Lee Westwood.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm honoured and delighted.
Let's bring in Paul McGinley, who joins us now. Paul, you're very welcome.
Shane Lowry, how are you keeping?
I'm good, thanks, yeah. Well, I'm as good as I can be.
The biggest names in golf and Ireland's best golf podcast, Golf Weekly, now exclusively available on Patreon. Go to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly to sign up now.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna auto mower.
Auto mower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna auto mower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
Get ready for the Cheltenham Festival with the Boyle Sports app, with a special offer guaranteed on every race, every day of the festival, plus extra places on each way bets over all 4 days. The Boyle Sports app has got you covered. Need to study up? Check out our Racing Post insights or watch our exclusive video previews with Cheltenham Gold Cup winning jockey Robbie Power. The Cheltenham Festival on the faster than ever Boyle Sports app. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie. 18 plus.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, I just want to tell you about this. If you sign up for Golf Weekly, this is the week to do it because it is moving to Patreon full-time from now. You'll get a guaranteed podcast every Thursday and extra episodes around the biggest tournaments of the year. For example, the Masters. There'll be interviews with golf's biggest names. You'll also become an official friend of the pod. You'll be able to chat to the lads, Joe, Nathan, Peter and Fionn. You'll get invites to our golf days. They're coming back, I promise. And you'll enjoy exclusive watch parties around the majors. Get on to otbsports.com/Golf Weekly and sign up now. It's only $3.99 a month. That's €1 a week, essentially. Or just search Golf Weekly on patreon.com. The page is live now. It's time for the Gillette Pressure Rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Right. Before we bring you our rankings, here's some of the audience suggestions, because every Monday morning on OTB AM we're going to be giving away a Gillette Starter Pack. We asked you to leave a comment into the comments box on the OTB Instagram stories, and Jamie Kavanagh, Mike Haley, he was really unlucky not to get a place in the Irish squad. Ronan Moran says Phil Healy, 4th and a PB in a European final. Yassin Mohammed, Luke Shaw for a man of the match performance at the Etihad. Harry says Bale, Solskjaer in green, Granit Xhaka and Liverpool in red. Turlo Clerkin says James Wade, UK Darts Open champion. Mick Blake says Gavin Coombs because of his constantly good performances throughout the season, and also Shane Daly. Sean Hall says 5 Liverpool, 4 Gordon Elliott, 3 Connacht, 2 Super Scotty Parker, and 1 is Munster / Manchester United. If you like your teams in reds, then go for it. Tyke Fanning says Mike Haley for his outstanding performance on Friday night against Connacht. Right, Owen Sheehan is the ultimate arbiter of the Gillette Performance Rankings. Who is red? Is it orange in the middle and green? Amber?
Liverpool is red, as we've been told quite a bit for the last couple of years, but red in a bad way this morning. They're bottom of our performance rankings. The worst performance of the weekend, and it's not really surprising at this point, going down to Fulham, who look like they might be on the verge of staying up, which is great news for everybody. Newcastle or Burnley might actually get relegated in their stead. So Liverpool doing everybody a favour here. But naturally, their performance and their new record has allowed many Manchester United fans, many Everton fans to come in and throw some shade right back at Liverpool. So they've lost 6 in a row at home at the moment, and the number 6 is basically what a lot of Liverpool fans have in their bio, because they've won 6 Champions Leagues, and a lot of puns around the name 6 during that really insufferable summer of 2019 when they won the Champions League. So that's all been thrown back in their face, which is obviously hilarious, but also kind of funny because Everton and Manchester United probably won't win the Premier League anytime soon themselves. I'm waiting for that to be clipped and thrown back at me by Manchester United fans next season. But sure, look, Liverpool, though, bottom of the performance rankings in at number 5. Number 4, also in the red, are an English rugby team. So I'm scrolling through the RFU Championship this morning, the second tier of English rugby. Top of the table at the moment are Ealing Trailfinders, the might of Ealing Trailfinders. In second place are Hartpury, and in a third place then are Cornish Pirates and Doncaster after them, and Coventry also on 4 points. So they're all in the promotion mix. If you go all the way down to 9th place in the RFU Championship, you find Saracens. This is the same Saracens that have conquered Europe on multiple occasions, that conquered Leinster last summer so spectacularly. They lost their first game in the championship at the weekend against the Cornish Pirates. 25-17 was the full-time score. Saracens had the lead 3 times in this game but couldn't get the job done. The Pirates have only played once in a year, and 3 of their players were part paid for by Jack Noel's neighbouring Swordfish Inn pub.
What?
Now, Rob Kitson, from his Guardian report, said Saracens tight head Vincent Koch has a World Cup winners medal in his collection. Suddenly, he was being shoved backwards by a front row sponsored partly by a local sweet shop. So a local sweet shop, the Swordfish Inn pub, there might be more here that are funding the Cornish Pirates. Saracens, of course, were missing their England contingent. Obviously, Owen Farrell wasn't there, but they still had 165 test caps between them. As I said, Koch was playing, Duncan Taylor was playing, Sean Maitland was playing. And to make matters worse, the Pirates co-coach, Alan Paver, came out after the game and said the guys, aka his own team, were not match fit. They were probably good for 60 minutes, but it was about sheer want and passion. So Saracens got beaten by the Cornish Pirates, who were only themselves for an hour of the 80 minutes.
Imagine if they don't come straight back up. How delicious would that be? And surely you're making up those names. There's no such place called Doncaster, is there?
We'll have to see if they actually show up and play Saracens over the next little while. Nottingham rooted at the bottom of the championship, and Richmond and Nottingham, the only 2 teams in English professional rugby that are worse than Saracens at the moment.
So there are poor performances. They're in the red. What is that? What's stuck in amber?
Well, see, amber is a tough one to fill because you need to fit the mould of a couple of cliches. So if your team gets mentioned in the air of getting the job done, if they ground the result out, if they are recipients of the rub of the green, then they probably qualify for amber. And Munster probably tick all those 3 boxes. They were relatively average on Friday night against Connacht, but they still won. So their future cliche bingo to move them into the green involves maybe squad depth, better discipline, maybe good hands, some offloads. They're the sort of things we need to hear about Munster to push them into the green. But I think a satisfying weekend all told for Munster.
I've got to say, I think that Munster are on the verge of flaming out into like an absolutely brilliant team over the next 3 or 4 years. That all of the requisite parts are there. You've got a head coach who's been there for quite a period of time, who has made all the mistakes that you make when you're a rookie head coach and has beefed up the coaching tickets, which now is genuinely world class, where the strength and depth is fairly sensational in some parts. Like weeks and weeks ago, we were talking about a crisis that they had at out half. Now they can start with Healy and they can keep Joey Carbery coming off the bench for the rest of the year. And that's probably the right thing to do, given that Joey Carbery has missed so much rugby over the last period of time. But your sub is like this absolutely sensational guy. And Healy's getting all the starting time, where he's learning exactly what it's like. Craig Casey has got massive exposure to playing time and should see some time in a Pro 14 final and in a European game in the next couple of weeks. Now, maybe it's not this season. I actually, Alan Quinlan earlier on was saying, stick the eggs in the basket of the Pro 14, win that game, you've got your trophy and you've got the monkey off your back. I understand that, I absolutely do. I do feel like next year is going to be the year where Munster are explosively good, where there'll be fans in Thomond. Imagine what a full Thomond will be like when you've got Craig Casey buzzing around the place, and your sub 9 and 10 could be Lyons out half and Joey Carberry, or it's Ben Healy coming off the bench at 10. That's like pretty exciting times. So I'd have them in green, but maybe not yet. Maybe you're right. Maybe this is the rev your engines. Let's go.
But think about it this way: their 9 could be starting next season. Their 9 could be Conor Murray, 10 could be Joey Carberry, 12 could be Damien De Allende, and 13 could be Chris Farrell. And that is not a bad spine to your attack whatsoever for Munster next season. And then you get stuck into the fact that there's a lot of depth, which is something that they haven't had. They haven't been able to hold a candle to Leinster's depth over the last couple of years. And you get the tone of Alan Quinlan this morning that maybe Munster might actually prefer to beat Leinster and win the Pro 14 this year and guarantee that silverware rather than winning that European game the week after. They'll try and win both, obviously, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's how they're looking at it.
And sorry, one last point on that. If you're Leinster, what do you do?
Well, that's a good question. I think Leinster okay, let's go back to Ger Eoin cliche bingo here. Don't give a sucker an even break.
That's what I was getting to. Yeah, absolutely. You make sure that they do not win that game because you want to delay their success as much as you possibly can. Kick that can down the road. So you pick your full team, absolute full team for that game, and you go, look, we're going to have a home Leinster round of European round of last 16. Let's deal with that down the road. You do not let them off the canvas. You've got them there. You keep them there.
There is something about 2021 and teams in red. Wales, Munster, Manchester United. When you least, well, actually not when you least expected. Maybe with Wales it's when you least expected. But Munster, when you must get back off the canvas, and they'll be in the mix again. So they're at number 3, Munster. Not a great performance, but still effective. Number 2, then we're getting into a couple of Irish athletes here. Cian McPhillips posing the question this week to all of us: what were you doing at the age of 18? Now, Cian McPhillips may have breezed through his 800-metre heat on Friday. He may have finished 4th in a really fast semi-final, which everybody thought for a while was actually a European under-20 record. That was announced in error at the time, but still an unbelievably good performance from an 18-year-old. Nice. But I've got bad news for County Longford and Cian McPhillips this morning. I had done prestige mode 4 times on Call of Duty 4 when I was his age, and I do not believe Cian Phillips can hold a candle to me in that regard. So I'm sorry, mate. Go off and do your leaving cert. Go and take your supposedly very fast European under-20 record time. It's not good enough as an 18-year-old, I'm afraid to say. Phil Healy, also really good at the weekend. Her victory in her 400-metre heat obviously came, and then the semi-final as well. And I guess some of us are getting more used to watching Phil Healy at 400 metres than at 100 or 200. And then in the final, for anybody who didn't see this, just makes one tactical shift coming down the home stretch, which she's not going to end up regretting, because she would have died wondering what would have happened if she hadn't made that move. But she comes off the bend, tries to come around and get into the medal position, but just comes up a little bit short. 1/5 of a second shy of a medal. So a really good performance from herself and Cian McPhillips, from my perspective anyway, the two that nudge Irish athletics into the green from the weekend's indoor action.
Okay, so was there one more green?
One more green, number 1. The performance of the weekend, of course, Bryson DeChambeau. Now, one thing we probably overlooked last year was when Bryson DeChambeau came back beefier and bigger than ever, we kind of forgot that he was doing this without the baying mob of American golf fans. Like, is there anything that an American golf fan loves more than seeing somebody hit something a long distance? I don't think there is. Like, Tiger Woods could blindfold himself, take out a 7-iron and chip in from 70 yards between his legs, and it would not be as impressive to them as Bryson DeChambeau hitting the ball 500 yards. They just love brute force, buff guys on the tee box, turning around saying, you know what, that water over there, I don't care about that water. I'm going to hit the ball 377 yards right over that water. And the 6th hole became this comedy act, this party piece from Bryson DeChambeau over the last couple of days. 370 on Saturday, 377, as I say, yesterday, and he goes on and wins at Bay Hill. A brilliant performance from him, but boy, oh boy, do the American golf fans love him.
Yeah, and so it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens if he can control it around Augusta, which is imminent at this point. So, so Bryson's your number one this week. What a fantastic achievement. Bryson is, and a great advertisement for taking your strength and conditioning seriously. Maybe we could all learn a bit from that. Good stuff. That is this week's Gillette Performance Rankings. Congratulations to Ronan Moran, who said Phil Healy should make the Performance Rankings after she ran a PB and finished 4th in a European final on Saturday night. Ronan, you've won a Gillette Starter Pack. We'll be in touch to get your details. You can win again next Monday morning on OTB AM with thanks to Gillette. That's that.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
Yeah, so OTBAM live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Joining us tomorrow from 7:30, we're bringing you a feature interview with the Irish midfielder Jack Byrne about life in Cyprus. There's Champions League, Six Nations build-up and much more as well. Stay with us here now, though, because Kenny Cunningham was back on OTB as we brought you live commentary of the Manchester derby. Here's his considered thoughts after the game.
Well, Kenny, in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's wildest dreams, could he have expected to win that derby as comfortably as Manchester United did?
In his wildest dreams, probably just about. I'm sure he may have envisaged the situation last night in terms of thinking, right, if we can get the defensive set up right, if everybody's absolutely at it, that banking forward, the defensive unit, McTominay and Fred, if they're as good as I know they can be in those defensive areas, everybody puts a shift in, we keep our concentration, make good decisions, those type of things. Yeah, we can go and keep a clean sheet. I think once you can keep this Manchester United team to keep a clean sheet, the possibilities that present themselves, particularly on the counter-attack with the qualities that they have. I wouldn't say that's exactly how the game panned out. You couldn't say the first goal was a classic counter-attacking goal by any shape or form. Came out of nowhere a little bit, didn't it? The nature of the goal was a bit odd. Still don't know why Jesus ended up on the edge of the penalty box. I'll have to rewind the 20 seconds further back. Seems really strange. Manchester City centre-forward is chasing down Martial on the edge of the penalty box, particularly when the two centre-half, because I've been in that position as a centre-half. You're in control. You can see Stones and Diaz, they're looking at Martial, they're showing him across the penalty box, you're going nowhere, and then all of a sudden you see your number 9 herding down the pitch, and you're thinking, oh God, here we go.
Did that goal just play exactly into Manchester United's hands? Because over the last 7 days they've got an awful lot of stick from the performance against Chelsea, for their performances against the top 6, as they're called, that they don't create enough chances, that they're happy to settle for the scoreless draws, that actually they could forget about that straight away because they had their goal. So actually they could revert to what they're very good at, which is setting up solid defensively and try and strike on the counter-attack.
Yeah, well, I don't buy into that. They're settled for score draws for a start. I think that's a ridiculous argument to make. I'd certainly settle for a clean sheet every week.
Would.
Well, that's what every manager should aspire to do. I don't care if you're the most attack-minded manager in the world. You want to dominate possession. You want to play the beautiful game. What should motivate you as well during the week is actually keeping a clean sheet as well and setting up your team to that effect. Mentioned to Joe after the game there. I think that's a challenge for every manager in any league, in any country, in terms of getting that happy balance between offering a threat in attacking areas of the pitch, creating opportunities and scoring goals, but at the same time having a solid defensive platform to build from as well.
Are they a good team defensively?
I think Manchester United, I think they are, but I don't think it's necessarily because they have the best defenders and the best defensive unit. And I'm thinking about the two centre-halves in particular. I don't think that's the strongest pairing that I've seen, but I really like the way he kind of protects them, Solskjaer. He's got 2 fullbacks for me, probably the 2 best defensive fullbacks in the league, and that helps. If you have a small bit of vulnerability in the centre of defence, what you need to do? Get 2 fullbacks in your team who can defend, who can narrow up to them and protect them, and get a barrier in front of them as well. Ideally, 2 central midfield players who understand how to defend, can stop balls getting played into the feet of centre forwards who might cause those centre halves trouble in 1v1 situation, who will screen things and who will actually protect them by saying to the 2 centre halves, just stay in your area of the pitch and just defend the penalty box. You don't have to run behind because we're not going to charge up the pitch. You're going to protect the space. You can sit 10 yards outside our penalty box. Anything over the top, the keeper will come and deal with. So that's how you any kind of frailty in the centre defence.
But can United get to the next level, having to give their central defence that much protection?
No, it's not the ideal. You can do. Manchester City have won titles with weaknesses in the centre defence. We've seen that under Guardiola. in terms of some of the quality he's had to deal with at centre halves, but it hasn't stopped them winning league titles. It stopped them winning from 8 Champions leagues.
They never played, not that they were there at that time, but they would play Fernandinho as the holding player. They wouldn't play Fernandinho and a Rodri together.
Yeah.
So do United just need one great number 6 and that would suddenly free everything up?
Yeah. No, it wouldn't free everything up. I think to play with a number 6 and 2 number 8s, and what I mean by 2 numbers is 2 attacking midfielders. So for me to consistently commit to playing Pogba and Fernandes in the Manchester United team in those central areas, which are their 2 best positions and most effective positions where you want to see him play, for me, you need a top-class number 6 in terms of a defensive mentality. I'm not sure if they have that. I've still got my doubts about Fred. McTominay's not a natural holding midfield player, but he might be able to develop those traits. He shows enough in terms of his discipline. Can he develop into that type of player as a number 6 going forward? Potentially. But what they also need as well, Nathan, they need that rock-solid central defensive partnership, and they haven't got it. Manchester United need to throw players into forward areas of the pitch at times, knowing when teams counter-attack them, that their 2 centre-halves can defend in 1v1 situations in their own half the pitch. And I think most Manchester United fans accept when Manchester United, like Maguire and Lindelof, find themselves in those 1v1 situations against centre-forwards of quality and pace, they're holding their fingers.
Yeah.
Like.
I've asked John Giles and Damien Delaney this week who that number 6 is, and they both came back with the same name. If you were Manchester United, it's
always Franco Baresi,
and you're looking at making that signing this summer, who are you looking at? Who's the player who can come in and be that guy for them?
I think there's some fine centre halves out there.
But is it a centre half or is it a central
both.
holding midfielder?
Oh, both. I'd say both ideally. If you're asking me, if I was being fussy, what they need to do to really break into that top level in terms of seriously challenge for the Premiership title and in Europe at the top competition, I'd say ideally both.
So who's the holding midfielder?
Well, I think if you look at holding midfielders, if you say you look in the Premiership, for me, probably that type of player has been the most effective this season. I'd suggest probably Ndidi at Leicester. I'd say that's the type of player that you're talking about. Now, you can go abroad and look at a couple of players who are playing abroad, but I'm talking about that type of player in terms of athleticism, kind of physicality, and just a natural defender.
Yeah.
Fernandinho in his prime, that type of player. That's the type
they went
of player.
with Declan Rice.
Yeah, Declan Rice. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think Declan Rice. Yeah, I think that's a fair argument. So that's the type of player. That type of player for me. Then you have a little bit more confidence in releasing Pogba and Fernandes into the team, because once you do that and you get Pogba and Fernandes in contact with that United front three, well then forget it. Then you're going to see those stats in terms of chances created and goal scores go up and up and up. Because that front 5 for Manchester United, sometimes people talk about, well, you know, they haven't got a 30-goal striker, they'll never. Forget about the 30, 35-goal striker. All that matters is the final goals stat at the end of the season.
Like last season.
And that can come anywhere. So if you've got that, and I'm telling you, that front 5 for Manchester United, if they keep fit, can provide like 15, 20 goals each between them. And I'm including Pogba and Fernandes in that, from those kind of advanced central midfield positions. So that's the temptation to get in that top quality number 6 in, and that solid central defensive partnership. Now, there was a time not too long ago where the argument was, got to get a top class centre half to play alongside Maguire. I'm not so sure at the moment. I think there's an argument there at the moment for saying start again. They got to change them both. A top class centre half alongside Maguire, even still, may not be good enough because of the kind of limitations Maguire has in terms of his athleticism. But I don't think that'll happen under Solskjaer. He's paid that amount of money for Maguire. I don't think he can turn away from him now. I think he's going to stick with him. So I think the best you can hope for there maybe is a top class centre half to come in. Keep Lindelof in reserve as a number 3. I think he's a good number 3 to have. Twanzebe be there as well if you need him. Boye, I'm not sure you could carry Boye as well. So they're the key questions that I'm absolutely fascinated going forward. Is the money there to go and get these players? You're talking a serious amount of money, unless your recruitment's good and you can go and get players at a cheap price. It's still possible to do that, but probably unlikely. So that'll be interesting. They're the key areas, but they always have been. That's been the case all season, Nathan with Manchester United. But I give him credit for the fact that those small weaknesses in the team that we're speaking about, Solskjaer, I think, and his coaching team have recognised that, and they're trying to shape up the team to negate for those small weaknesses in the team. And I think they're doing a pretty good job at the moment in doing that.
Luke Shaw's been one of the real success stories of this season, and he's a player who's taken an awful lot of stick over the last few years. Got his goal today.
From who?
From pundits, Kenny. Your type. Well, it hasn't gone as well as expected during his time at Manchester United.
Yeah,
you don't agree?
No, I don't actually, to be honest with you. I don't. I never quite saw that massive drop-off in terms of performance from... who are we talking about?
Luke Shaw.
Luke Shaw, yeah.
Why did they sign Tellez then?
Well, competition and backup. But when he was getting that criticism, particularly from, I think it's Marino. Marino started this, and he kind of created a kind of backstory around Shaw in terms of this kid is underachieved, he's not good enough, he's carrying away, attitude problems, too many fizzy drinks, cola bottles. All of that was getting thrown at the player. And I thought it was some of the worst man management that I've ever seen. I thought he'd actually killed the player. I've got to be honest with you. And some people say, "Oh yeah, tough love. He turned Luke Shaw around." I don't think he did, Marino. I think it was just the kid's kind of strength, character, and attitude. He just kind of kept his head down, just kept working at his game. But the quality was always there. Nathan, and there was an opportunity at one stage. It looked as if Danny Rose, when he was at his peak, was going to head to Old Trafford, and it looked as if Spurs were going to be able to get Luke Shaw possibly in a swap deal. And I always thought, go and get him, because you'll be getting the better. This lad is the better player than Danny Rose. When he gets over those injury problems, bit of confidence, you know how it goes. I thought he always had those qualities, Luke Shaw. He's a more mature player now. I think he's tightened up on the defensive side to his game, don't get me wrong. But in terms of his strengths defensively and going forward now, very few weaknesses in his game. Very few players get the better of him 1v1 situations, Nathan. Just like Wan-Bissaka, but the difference between them going forward, Luke Shaw more productive than Wan-Bissaka. Ball retention is good, makes good decisions, doesn't give the ball away cheaply. He's really reached an area of his game for me, playing with real maturity now. He understands the game, understands his strengths and weaknesses, and he's developed into a really top-class, accomplished left-back.
Where are United then? Because 11 points behind Manchester City. Unless City have a Liverpool-esque collapse, they'll go on to win the league.
Yeah.
And I see already a lot of United supporters looking back at the last few weeks and thinking about Everton and Sheffield United. And if this had happened, they could be right there in a title race. Are they right to think that? Is a couple of little slip-ups, or is there a reason that they're this far behind?
There is a reason, Nate. There is the limitation, and we're kind of constantly speaking about those kind of limitations. We're speaking about the kind of, the qualities of those two central midfielders, as good as they are defensively. What's their technical abilities? Can they play in tight areas? No, they can't. Are they playmakers as such? Are they going to control the tempo of the game, McTominay and Fred? No. So you've got to make those allowances. You can't have it both ways. You can't look for that kind of rock. Well, you can. I suppose that's the ideal. You're looking for that rock solid defensive side to your game, but also having a kind of real bit of quality and creativity to your game as well. Probably it's not quite there for Manchester United at the moment, but I think Solskjaer recognises that. In all honesty, it just remains to be seen whether he's given the funds to go and strengthen. A lot of talk about Sancho coming in and Haaland, but like I said to you, if I would gladly take that top class number 6 and at least one top class centre half ahead of any reinforcements up the pitch. I'd sacrifice Hangland and Sancho in forward areas of the pitch to get that top class number 6, because that top class number 6 will free up Pogba and Fernandes in that central area of the pitch, and that'll give them a whole new dimension to their attacking play. And a front three of who's your best Manchester United front three?
Greenwood, Rashford, Cavani now.
Now give me a better front three at the moment in world football.
In world football, well, I'd have Erling Haaland by himself as
front
the
three.
match of all three of them.
Front three. My point is, there's not much more. There's a couple there you can make an argument. If you could probably say Haaland, Sancho, Dortmund, maybe Royce or whatever. But my point is, I suppose they're up there. You can say Liverpool front three. Obviously, they've dropped off, but we know the standards they've been at. There's more to come from Greenwood. He's probably going to be the best of the lot. He's an absolute. I think he's going to be a world class.
But they haven't scored enough goals this season. That front three.
No, they haven't scored enough. But there's more to come. I think Greenwood's going to get better. And like I said, if that axis changes in midfield and you get Pogba and Fernandes on the pitch in those central areas, that's what I'm saying. That's where the goals will come from. The more, not just goals for themselves, but more opportunities for other players as well.
City come into this 21 straight wins, so I don't know how critical you can be, but it was an unusually flat performance, particularly Kevin De Bruyne, who was I know maybe he's just still coming back from injury.
Xbox. Absolute cast on. Joe was right. Letting professionals on their Xboxes till 2 or 3 in the morning. It affects you. Not getting enough good quality sleep. That was a player who's been hammering his Xbox for the last couple of weeks. And eventually I caught up to him. Joe was absolutely right. Obviously, I'm kidding. Look, these players are absolutely human. Kevin De Bruyne in particular, standards that he set. And a couple of injuries as well. I think we take it for granted. Oh, he's back from injury, yeah, bum. He's got to pick up where you left off. It's not always the case. And he's picked up a lot of, I wouldn't say serious injuries, but not niggles as such, like, you know. So I think we should cut him a little bit of slack. So I have no problem with that whatsoever. But just too many of those performances today. I could 5 or 6 quite easily who are below their standards that they've set recently. That was the difference.
Does it change the way you think about them for the rest of the season? And you may not have bought into the hype around they'll go and they'll win everything. Do you look at that performance and think, actually, Champions League, that may be a cause for concern?
No, I think there's that performance today, but it hasn't been the we haven't seen that week in, week out. This is the exception to the rule.
Did we get carried away with how good they are?
I think there might have been a little bit of that at the start of the game. Spoke about Cancelo early on in the penalty box, trying to drop his shoulder and beat a couple of people. That probably indicates to me as somebody thinks he's on the top. Has been playing well, don't get me wrong, playing very well. But somebody may be getting a little bit too caught up in the hype. And sometimes when you have to put your foot through the ball, that's the right thing to do. You think, well, I'm a better player than that. I'm a footballer. I've been the best player in this team for the past 6 weeks. People expect a little bit more. So I'm going to drop my shoulder now and beat 2 players inside the penalty box. Now he's lost the ball and Luke Shot's getting a shot on target. So it may be a little bit of that. I'm sure the manager will be aware of that. He'll get onto the cases of the players and say, look, just a little bit of casualness crept in today. Don't let it happen again. So I'm sure there'll be a reaction from their Manchester City players. And I still think that argument applies in terms of Manchester City winning the quadruple, because I still feel as if in terms of the balance to the team, that wasn't their best team on the pitch today for me. I have Fernandinho in the team ahead of Rodri. I think even there's an argument for Foden coming into the team across the front line ahead of Mahrez or even Sterling or Jesus, one of them. So I think maybe that's where you can slightly improve that team. But I like the balance in the team, the partnership at centre-half. We know they're a lot better today, and I still think the argument is there, potentially they can go and win the quadruple. It won't be easy. The league's done. I think Spurs could cause them a problem. Spurs looks as if they might turn the corner now. That should be absolutely cracking game, the Carling Cup final. But I think they're in great shape in the Champions League because they have that defensive resilience now, that quality in the centre defence that they've never had previously going into this stage of European competition.
A couple of quick points on the earlier games. What the hell has gone wrong for Liverpool? This is unprecedented. We've seen teams struggle to retain the Premier League title, but to go from 3.5 years, 68 games unbeaten at Anfield, to lose 6 in a row at home, not look like threatening to score a goal. Somehow, Kenny, sum it up.
No, I think, it was mentioned today on the commentary, things going from bad to worse, but I don't think it actually does it justice. We're literally saying it's almost gone from, ridiculous to monstrous. You just can't believe how I say how bad it's got, but I'll be honest with you, Nathan, I don't think it's a case you can look at it and say, how's it kind of come to? I think there are reasons there. It'd be easy to say, there's just no reason for this. This is just crazy. It's not crazy. It's not crazy because they've had the heart of defence ripped out in terms of Van Dijk. It's an obvious thing to say, Gomez, but they haven't been able to find a replacement pairing, not up to that quality, but in terms of maybe the quality required to sustain a Premiership title challenge. That's just been the fact. They had an option to go out and buy big. They didn't do it. They chose to invest in a young boy from Preston, and Kabak has come in with maybe question marks. He doesn't look as if he's ready yet. Might be potentially going forward, but certainly not the player to come in and elevate that team immediately. So they've left themselves exposed in that area of the pitch.
And that may see you not be in a title race with a relentless Manchester City, but to have as calamitous a collapse as this points to this has become something far bigger than the central defensive problem.
Yeah, so what's happened there is because of that, then they've had to take Fabinho and Henderson out of those central midfield, and they kind of dominate that area of the pitch. They really set the tempo for Liverpool in that central area of the pitch when they both play there. Fabinho was the 6 and Henderson probably just right side of an 8. They were the two who really kept Liverpool foreign in terms of their tenacity, that kind of high energy, kind of making tackles, starting off the high press, that type of thing. So now you're taking them out of the central area of the pitch and you're having to drop them into different areas of the pitch, particularly centre half. Fabinho's come out of the team, he's been injured. So now you're disrupting that central area of the pitch. Oh, it's okay, we can get Thiago in, he's a top class player. Well, yeah, he's a top class technician. Argument whether he's a top class player for me, but he's a totally different type of player. And he's not he's a totally different type of player to Fabinho and Henderson. So now you're totally changing. The dynamic in that central midfield area. You're not playing a kind of high energy, kind of high press game now, because you've got a player in central midfield player who can't do that. He's not a particularly good runner. He's not a particularly good athlete. He can't tackle. I don't think he can defend. I think he's a great technician.
I think you said that when they signed him.
Yeah, that's right.
And did you expect then when he came in that Liverpool's game, that he wouldn't be expected to do what he's having to try and do, which is, it seems you say, constantly being caught out of position, chasing down, can't tackle?
Well, I didn't expect him to come in. My argument was when he came in, I don't put him in the team. I might have made the point he's the tour choice number 6, and I stick by that behind Fabinho and Henderson. I think you've seen the reason why. You could make the argument, he's the best technician, clever in tight areas, working the ball around the corner, kind of little 1-2s. Yeah, absolutely. But when Liverpool turn over possession of the ball and they need somebody to go and counter press quickly and disrupt the opposition to kind of track a runner, eat up the ground, go and get in contact with the two centre halves, cover the full back, get across and double up with the full backs on both sides of the pitch. He can't do it. So that's what I'm saying. That type of player now in central midfield, because of the reasons that we've said, now they've changed the dynamic in that central mid. Now they're a different type of team. They're not playing the type of football, that rock and roll football that they've played previously. So now the problem's not just the centre half. Now there's issues in terms of the balance now in central midfield. And I'd even make the argument for Jota, as well as he's played. Him coming into the team, I'm thinking, this is interesting. Is he going to play in instead of one of the front three? No, he's going to play with them. So now Liverpool are going to play with a front four. They're going to play with a front three and a number 10. Take your pick wherever they play. So now that changes the shape, the dynamic in midfield. Now you're playing with a 2 number 6s in centre midfield, which Liverpool have never played with. Now you're playing with different patterns now. Now the whole thing kind of changes. So all these subtle things are going on under the surface, are bubbling away as well. So when people say to me, not that too many have, like, I don't talk to too many people, obviously. But if they say, forget about it, Van Dijk, Gomez back, just pick up where we left off, not so easy. Not so easy for me. So that's why I'm fascinated to see how Klopp sees it this summer in terms of recruitment, whether he feels as if, not necessarily because it's an aging squad or people have totally dropped off in terms of performance, where he just feels as if he needs to get back to that Liverpool model which was so successful, or whether he's going to veer away from it and thinks he can actually be successful, maybe playing a different type of way with the likes of the Thiago into the team, a more technical player. We're playing a front 4 now with a number 10 as opposed to that midfield 3 and a front 3. So that's what I think is fascinating for me going forward from a Liverpool point of view.
You're the only man I know, if I ask you for your favourite 0-0 draw, you can talk for 20 minutes and give your top 10. You were watching
West Brom Newcastle.
You were watching West Brom
Newcastle
earlier.
That was a lead-in, I took the bait.
So we had Kieran Clark on one side, we had Darragh O'Shea on the other side. Is that your starting central defensive pairing for Ireland against Serbia in a couple of weeks' time?
I wouldn't. I'd have no problems with it whatsoever. I suppose the argument is they haven't played together too often. Kieran hasn't played for some time, but he's quite an experienced player. Probably the best player on the pitch today. Really impressed me. Defended his air, but it didn't surprise me. I think the qualities Kieran Clark has. Kind of very dependable. He's quite aggressive. Doesn't physically impose himself on people. But he's a good read of the game. Wins his fair share of tackles. Very comfortable on the ball. Defends his area of the pitch very well. Almost a player you look at and think I can trust him. And Darragh O'Shea's made great strides this season. And the reason I think maybe Darragh, there's a stronger argument for Darragh ahead of some the other players. And I think an area of the game where he has the advantage is in terms of his distribution from central defence. I think he's the best in terms of distributing the ball out, not only into midfield, but into forward areas of the pitch. He's very accurate over long distances, in particular that big switch of play. Absolutely fantastic. I worked with Darragh a couple of years ago with the 19s. You could see that. So he's polished his game up. He's probably not the most dynamic of players. We saw that today 1 or 2 occasions. Joe Linton just maybe ran him in behind. A little bit kind of one pace. I know what that feeling's like. But his all-round game's very good. And he's very productive in possession in the football. And that's a great attribute to have at international football. And I think in particular with Stephen will appreciate that type of centre-half, someone with the ability to travel forward into midfield and actually break the lines, punch balls through the lines with his passing, and also that accuracy of delivery over longer distances. So I think he's pushing and pushing even stronger for his starting position. It'd be very interesting to see what Stephen does for the game. He's got options there. Shane Duffy's actually fit. I know people will say, Shane's fit, he's dropped confidence and all that type of thing. I understand that, but that's not a given. Shane Duffy should come out of the team. Sometimes you got to know your players, their personality, mentally how strong they are. Can we trust Shane Duffy to put all those kind of disappointments that he's felt this season, frustrations of Celtic, to the side and kind of refocus and put in the type of performance that we need. Stephen Kenny might decide, yeah, I do. I trust him. You might have those conversations with Shane and say, do you know what? You're ready. You're my captain. I'm sticking with you. And that might be the right decision. And then the decision might be who plays alongside him. But that's a decision for the people on the inside, Stephen, and his support staff.
Kenny, great stuff as always.
Nice one.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved